Stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, very welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. It's Jerno with you all the way through until 10, and we have special guest Kenny Cunningham in studio. Kenny, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. All good, I think.
It is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was an interesting night last night, Owen. You made the point off air this morning that football is good.
Football is objectively an enjoyable thing for us to watch, isn't it? And I'm not even talking about the Champions League at this point. And you don't even need the consequences from the Premier League from last night to look at this week's fixtures and say, that game has meaning, that game has meaning, that game has meaning, that game has meaning. All but one of the fixtures this weekend in the Premier League have something riding on it for relegation, top four, or the title race. And the one that doesn't is Brighton against Aston Villa, which has maybe something riding on it for something else, sure.
Well, Burnley are 7 points behind Villa at the moment. Is it completely inconceivable that Villa go into a tailspin, that Steven Gerrard, it turns out, has feet of clay?
I mean,
he's mortal.
Imagine, that would be extraordinary. I do think that Brentford and Leeds United are in significant trouble, as are Everton. I think weirdly Newcastle, being the team in 17th, are the safest of that tranche of teams. I'm not sure if that's kind of a common opinion out there, but it certainly looks to me that Brentford, Leeds and Everton are more vulnerable than them, and Burnley are possibly going to Burnley their way out of the situation once again this season.
One of the things that everybody complains about in the show is that we don't tell everybody what happened last night straight off the bat. They wake up, they roll out of bed and they're like, oh, why didn't you just tell me what happened? So we'll tell you what happened. Atletico Madrid and Manchester United drew 1-1. Benfica and Ajax drew 2-2 in the Champions League. Burnley beat Spurs by 1-0 in the Premier League. Watford were beaten 4-1 at home by Crystal Palace, the Roy Hodgson derby. And Liverpool beat Leeds 6-0. So it has repercussions, I suspect, for what happens in the off-season for several of those clubs. Let's start with Antonio Conte and Burnley. I don't know if we have the audio ready to go or not, but if we don't, we'll get it in a second. Spurs the weekend were very good, right? When they beat Man City?
Yeah, played very well. Set up really well and, just ruthless. The opportunities presented themselves. The game plan was spot on. Looked as if the players were switched on, really up for a Kane in particular, highly motivated for obvious reasons, I'd imagine, going to the Etihad. So you know what, I wasn't hugely surprised by the result.
Well,
I know there was that initial reaction, oh amazing, Spurs have gone there and won, but I think it was more so off the back of they'd lost the previous two at home. So they're in a dark place. How can they possibly pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get a result? But invariably that's what happens. You get a response from your players. And I just think that was unique in terms of, like, Kane, I'm talking about. Sons, I was always fancied his chance, and Conte himself going there in terms of really being motivated in terms of the setup of the team, the tactical setup of the team. That kind of all came together.
I thought maybe it was the turning of a corner, but it definitely wasn't, because last night
they've rammed straight into a brick wall.
So last night you look at that result and you're like, your initial response is, okay, Spurs got beaten by Burnley after beating Manchester City. This is the most inevitable result ever. Of course, we all saw this coming. We all weren't getting carried away with Saturday, but we were. We were saying that this was one of the best games in the Premier League season, that Harry Kane's individual performance was one of the best in the Premier League in recent years. And we've got a manager here, and it wasn't an overreaction to believe in Antonio Conte, to look at his track record and say, this guy is good at being a football manager. So it isn't the most inevitable result in the world last night, losing to a team in the bottom three. They should absolutely, if they were worth their salt, followed up on the result on Saturday night and got all 3 points away to Burnley last night. I mean, this was not inevitable, Kenny, was it?
No, but I
think though,
you think about a logic. I mean, Liverpool went there not too long ago. We know the level Liverpool are playing at the moment. They kind of eked one out, didn't they? 1-0 clean sheet and just did enough. United had their problems there recently. I can only guess what the weather was like. Haven't seen the game at Burnley last night in terms of that being challenging for Spurs going there as well. And they're on a decent run at the moment. Deutsch, they're on the up. Bit of feel-good momentum behind them, so I think it's too easy to say, who could have saw this? Burnley turn off the back of the Manchester City. I think it was always likely, but it is a blow, And I think it's very interesting listening to Conte. I was just listening to hear his comments after the game
Well,
last night.
we have some. We actually have some. We can play this.
Roll it in.
Here he is. Yeah, exactly. Here's what Antonio Conte. Some of what he had to say. We'll play you more of this later because it is fairly interesting.
I'm not. Maybe I'm not so good. Yes, I'm not so good, and I think Tottenham called me to improve the situation, but I'm too honest. I'm too honest to close my eyes. You understand, and to continue to tell. Okay, but I want to finish my season in this way, and okay, but my salary is good. No, but I'm not this type of person. I have ambition. I'm a person that I have ambition. I hate to lose. And we lost, I repeat, 4 games in the last 5 games. And I want to accept this. And I want to try to move the situation, also to make assessment with the club.
There seems to be some suggestion in the English press this morning that Antonio Conte is deciding whether or not he will stay in the job. This is remarkable. It is really remarkable because anybody else who loses 4 games in 5, they're like, we're going to sack this guy. With Antonio Conte, it's like, maybe I'll sack the club. It's like, I'm getting paid a lot of money, but I'm too honest.
I think there is a degree of honesty to that, though. We saw a little bit of Inter Milan in the summer in terms of wanting to build on what he achieved there last season, and obviously didn't get the kind of indication from the board there that they were going to reinvest and they're going to back him to an extent. And he was like, "Well, that's I can't exist in that environment. I'm off. You know what I mean? It has to be not kind of my way, but this, these are not even so much these are my demands. This is what I expect. If I'm going to bring everybody with, we've all got to be together type thing. And if anything less, what's the point? Kind of life's too short." So I can understand that a little bit. But he was very vocal a couple of days ago off the back of the Manchester City. He was really holding up the dressing room, wasn't he? He was saying, "Look, I've been in a lot of dressing rooms, but these lads, these are amongst attitude, characters. This is what I want. I almost forgive anything in terms of lack of individuality here and there because this group is pretty special." So I mean that kind of blew me away a little bit. I thought, wow, because under Nuno early in the season, I think he probably could have questioned the character of a couple of those players inside the dressing room in terms of how much they're actually pulling for the previous match. But yeah, he's extolling their virtues in terms of the kind of the character within the confines of the dressing room. I thought, well, that's that. If you're a Spurs supporter, listen to that, you're thinking, wow, we've definitely got something to build on here. At least the dressing rooms together. You could argue maybe we haven't got enough quality in certain areas of the pitch, but the fundamentals are in place, Jared. That's what he seemed to be saying. But this is, I'm not quite sure what he's saying here. If it's simply is this, could you spin this in terms of, look, the group, the attitude's good, but just the quality isn't there. I need money. You need to go and get me 4 or 5 top class players. Is it as simple as that? It doesn't quite seem to be as simple as is that his roundabout way of saying it? I can only do so much. I'm a good coach, but even I can only do so much in terms of with the relative quality in the squad. The attitude's great, some great personalities, but fundamentally, if the quality's not there, I can only... It's difficult to read into what he's saying.
It is difficult. It is difficult, and there's obviously a slight language barrier. What were you going to say?
Well, it seems like that's the sort of stuff he could be saying and possibly should be saying. Like, this is very, very dramatic from Conte. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be dramatic. Maybe the situation is, maybe he's appalled by what he's seen at the club since he's come in there. Maybe he's got every right to be dramatic. But what we're getting as a public is like this angsty teenager who is overreacting to every single little bit that's gone wrong in the dressing room. And granted, as I say, a result against Burnley is not a good result. It is a bad result. They've lost to Southampton, they've lost to Wolves, they've lost to Burnley in their last 4 Premier League fixtures. So things haven't gone well. But when Conte comes out to face the media after things not going well, things get worse. Things get more dramatic. Things get more intense. So there's no way this thing lasts beyond, I don't know how long, beyond the end of the season, well into next season at this stage, because every little setback that's been had, Conte has taken it very, very badly. And of course that comes from a place of him being a serial winner, right?
And also there's a built-in melodrama with Antonio Conte that is his kind of natural expressive way, which is different from previous managers in England who are
I don't think it's put on, lads, is it? I don't think it's kind of forced. It's not for the camera.
This is who he is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just coming out, and we've seen it previously, particularly at Chelsea in terms of how badly it went there, and obviously last year in Inter Milan. So in some respects, I have a little bit of respect for that. You could argue he's doing the right thing in terms of how he's projecting himself there, the effect that's going to have on the dressing room, that going to unsettle the dressing room. And I think that's a fair point, because you always have to be conscious, I think, of the players in the dressing room as a manager when you speak pre-post match. You know, any kind of media responsibilities, you know the players are watching out, listening.
Yeah,
so you have to factor that in. But when it's honesty, when it's not pure like honesty and it's coming from the heart, I've got a little bit of respect for it. So I think that's what I'm saying. I just don't know where it's going to end up.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. That's the question. That is the $64 million question. Is he the manager at the end of the transfer window? The next transfer window, is he still the manager of Spurs?
Well, I think if Daniel Levy, you're watching, he doesn't, not too many facial expressions, and that you see Daniel Levy at the games, but generally there must have been at least raised eyebrows listening to that post match. So I would think at some stage very quickly he's got to sit down with Antonio Conte. He hasn't done already, Levy, and say, look, I understand your frustration. We all share it. We know where you want to be. We want to be there as well in terms of Spurs competing Champions League and maybe looking beyond that to push to close the gap with the top three. You know, we're all behind you. We all want the same thing. So, what do you need? Is it a financial? How much do you need to spend? What players do you need? I'll back you as much as I can. I think fundamentally it's going to come down to that. When you break it all down, really, I think he's looking at that squad and thinking, this squad can compete at the top end. Am I prepared to commit myself here for the next 2 to 3 years with limited investment into the squad, and really full of the knowledge that I can't bridge that gap with the top three, and really I'm competing for that 4th Champions League spot at best.
Yeah. Now, it's like in world football, it's not a bad job. He's going to get paid very well. There is a possibility that they will invest in the summer, that they have a proper resource in the stadium, that the deck kind of, as the stadium starts to fill, there's loads of concerts there in the summer, they start to begin to have money again. This might not be the precise moment you want the job, but like after last week when they beat City, you're like, oh, he's going to be able to do something here. And at the moment, I just am stunned by what he's saying, and maybe there is a gap in when he's saying I need to make an assessment. Does he mean he needs to get deeper into the club and check how the youth system is working and the throughput of players, or is he like, I need to make an assessment whether I'm going to stick around? Yeah, it sounds more like to stick around.
I don't think he should look too deep into that in terms of I need to make an assessment in terms of the whole structures at the football club. I think that's more of an assessment of I need to speak to the owner here. I need to find out what funds are available in the next 2 windows for me to reinvest in this squad. I think he knows. I think there's a level of self-confidence with him. I think he knows the qualities which he has. He's a very good coach, lads. He can set up a team, particularly not just the defensive setup. I think that's too easy to say, his defensive mentality just sets his team up well defensively. I think he kind of blew that out of the water a little bit into the last 2 years. If anybody watched that Inter Milan team play the last 2 years, played some wonderful attacking football, actually counter-attacking football. He managed to accommodate some of the best footballers in Italy in that team, Brozovic and Barella, Eriksson. You know, Eriksson went there and I was scratching my head. How's he going to get into? How's Conte going to find a place for him in his team? But he did. So for me, even then, the last 2 years, I looked at Conte and thought, you know what, he's getting better as a manager. This kind of defensive mentality, which was kind of a label kind of put on him for quite some time, it actually doesn't stand up. He's actually becoming better. So I think for me, I'm a huge fan. He's an absolute top class manager. I think he has an effect. He has had an effect going in there in terms of the structures that he's put in place, to kind of tactical setup of the team. I think they're better, and I think the players have drawn a bit of confidence from him. Yeah, Jared, in terms of his kind of confidence and his pedigree. And that's a bit of a slight on the players, to be honest with you, because I think a couple of them kind of switched off. Yeah, I think so. And I'm a huge Nuno fan, but I think if a few of the players looked at him, I'm not really having him.
No, and they didn't feel like he was there for the long haul. And also Harry Kane was having his strop. Yeah, he was mid-strop, so it's not going to be a straight line.
Now Antonio's mid-strop.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and maybe there's a bit of madness there, where it's like, I'm going to be the one who has this massive reaction afterwards, and I question myself in the hope that gets the response from the players, because after that, what else has he got? He's come in. He's ruling with the iron fist is generally how we hear about this, and he got rid of some players very quickly, although he complained about the amount of players that left as well, which was kind of ironic. It was like, I'm getting rid of these players because I really don't want them, and there's a few others I wanted to get rid of as well. But then he goes to the papers, he goes to Sky Italia and complains about it. It's all a bit weird. We'll come back to this a little bit later on, because I know John Duggan has thoughts on it. our resident Spurs fan. But we also want to talk about Ralph Rangnick and Anthony Elanga. Here's Rangnick talking to Paramount and BT Sport about Elanga, who scored the equaliser last night after he came off the bench. Have a look.
To be honest, on the very first day of training, that was the night before the first game against Crystal Palace, he was the best player in the training session. So I asked my colleagues, who is he? I knew his name, but I didn't know him at all. He had almost left the club at the time on loan to another club. And I told him after that training session, listen, I want to see you here for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, since then he just has improved. He's playing with all the energy that you need for that game. He's extremely fast. He can shoot with both legs, left and right leg. He can also score with his head, what he did against Brentford. And yes, it's just fun to see him play. I wish a few other players would take him as an example or like a almost role model, I would say. Not because he's doing everything right, but he's just enjoying himself on the pitch, and that's what it's all about. We know that football is an important sport, ball game, and even more so for our supporters or for the media, but it's still a ball game, and you have to enjoy yourself on the pitch. And this is what I would wish us to do in the future, also when we play them again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, such a well-run club that they were about to send Anthony Elanga out on loan to the Championship to get
wherever his name is.
Some time in the man's game.
Wherever his name was meant to go to a club, whatever the name was, and it didn't happen. And thank God he stayed. Whatever his name is.
Well, there is a bit of I came and spotted this thing, and he scored this goal, and it's all because of me. There's a little bit of that. There's definitely the post-fact rationalisation by the manager, bigging the manager up there. It's like a subtle enough. I was the only one who could see this guy who the club have obviously had on their books for a long time.
You've been too cynical there, Jay. You've been too cynical. I'll give Rangnick a bit of credit again in terms of, we're talking about Conte, projection, your post-pre-match. No, but I think he's very honest and quite open in terms of his interviews, you know what I mean? Again, I don't get that bit of a sense of anything, somebody with a bit of an agenda here type thing, or big ego, that type of thing, you know what I mean? I don't get much of a sense of that to give him, you know, you could criticise him to a small extent in terms of performances, etc., since he's come in and where's the club going and the whole shebang. But generally speaking, I think he's actually carried himself quite well. So I'd take a little bit of issue in terms of your cynical attitude.
I know I'm gently trolling him because you speak to the Man United fans and they all really like the fact that he comes in and says, we played badly, these guys played badly, this guy isn't in my team because he won't do what I need him to do today. There's a truth about what he's saying, and it's diagnosing all of the issues that Solskjaer would have been like, oh, they're all great, great.
Tuchel's a bit the same, isn't it? I think that's refreshing. I think a lot of people, I actually enjoy listening to Tuchel speak. He'd done it again the other night. Now, very open in terms of, you know, hey Thomas, could you tell us how you might set up? So yeah, I'll tell you. But flat back four, I'm going to play one holder, two number 8s. This is what I expect out of possession. This is what you're going to see when we get possession. You're going to see plenty of rotation. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And this is 40 minutes before kickoff, and it's rare. And post match they're very same. They actually give you an awful lot, maybe too much. Some people would suggest, but it's actually fascinating to listen to. Now he's. Rangnick wouldn't be as technical maybe as Tuchel, but I think the principle's still the same. I'm prepared to be open here and be as honest as I kind of can with you.
He was very honest once again in breaking down his own tactical decisions last night. He said, after 7 minutes we were 1-0 down and the plan was in the dustbin. I knew this was not Lindelof's best position at right back. For anyone who didn't see the game, but when we had Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the ball and Alex Telles, we had more possession and more assistance from the wings. And then he says, what we played in the first half, I still cannot believe we played without conviction, without aggression, and that is why we were struggling. Is that what you want to hear from your manager, Kenny? That, you know, that acceptance that, you know, playing a centre back at right back was not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think you can get away, not too often. You can't. Don't think you can be constantly rolling up after every single game and say, look, hands up, I've had a shocker there again. But that's me, that's Ralph. Let's get it out there, let's be honest. Yeah, so I think every so often you can, people suck it up, and he's right. He got all scratching our heads a little bit last night. We saw Lindelof, we talking back three here, but who's going to play the wing back? Then you thought, well, no, it looks like a back four. And I didn't understand the argument. He played well at the weekend, don't get me wrong. Lindelof against Leeds, he had a couple of little forages up the pitch, but I mean, you know, that's the exception to the rule. If you watch Lindelof play, and we all have the last couple of years, that's not a feature of his game in terms of like drifting into midfield and providing a real kind of cutting edge and attacking threat. So to suddenly think, I'll put him at right back and we'll actually get a bit out of him going forward. Also he's going to be rock solid defensively. I really wasn't kind of buying into that, especially when you got someone like Wan-Bissaka. If your mentality is I want my best defender at right back for the game, if you're thinking potentially Thomas Lamar is going to play over that side of the pitch, I need to get my strongest defender there. It's got to be Wan-Bissaka. Now Wan-Bissaka has his limitations going forward, which is kind of what's holding him back a little bit.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, he's very solid defensively. His athleticism, his speed. A couple of times last night, Lindelof struggled a little bit. Joe Felix dropped his shoulder, burst acceleration. He struggled a little bit, hacked him down, got his yellow card, and was a bit of a struggle for him. So, yeah, so it was the wrong decision. He's held his hand up, and he's right. First half, that performance was indirectly. I mean, you can't be washing your hands of that to a certain extent. I mean, that was awful. He's gone, that's awful first half. No conviction, attitude. It was all wrong. Bum, bum, bum. But unfortunately, that's the manager.
Exactly.
And ultimately, that's going to...
You can diagnose the problem, but it's not like you're a bystander. You sent the team out to play like this. They are responding to the team that you picked and the instructions that you've given them, and they're not clear on what you were trying to achieve, right?
I don't think it's simple as that either, to be honest, because some of the basic fundamentals there last night, yeah, what people were doing was just like, it's just rubbing me eyes. I mean, Pogba and Fernandes, I mean, it was... the amount of... But the ball they turned over was literally incredible. The amount of times they received the ball and gave it away. Now people say, "Oh, Pogba, typical Pogba." That's not typical Pogba. One of Pogba's greatest strengths is his ability to retain possession and manipulate the ball and keep possession. Fernandes as well. And I mean, Fernandes has had a erratic season in some respects, but you can generally hang your hat on him in terms of giving the ball it sticks, and he completes the next pass, and he couldn't. And those basic fundamentals from those two players, so that's very difficult for me. I find that very difficult to throw that at the manager and say, "Well, that's your responsibility." I don't really think the tactical setup, what he was asked them to do, information he was giving them to a large extent came into play there, Jared. I think those players in particular have to have a look at them, have a look at themselves. But just when you're about, with Manchester United, I find, just when you're about to throw the towel in, and must be the case for the majority of Manchester United, say, "That's it. This is it now. I'm absolutely finished." They suddenly dig deep. They done it again the weekend again against Leeds, 2-0 down, got back to 2-1. You're thinking, "Oh, here we go," and suddenly they found something. They kind of pulled together at Ellen Road at the weekend. And found something that last half hour of the game, and they did it again last night. Second half, they started to fight. About 10-15 minutes into the second half, you just got a sense of, right, here we go. Let's roll up our sleeves a little bit. Let's start competing. No, I don't think it was that simple, but it just felt slowly. Start winning a few tackles, start winning second balls, and slowly but surely began to pull themselves back into the game. So you'd have to begrudgingly, even if you don't admit, there's something there. There's a bit of that. That's not a dressing room that's totally broken, Jer, where everybody's, it's all fractured. Yeah, the whole place is fractured. I'm all right, Jack. You can't just. I saw that last night, and that'd give you a bit of hope, give you some kind of hope going forward as a Manchester United supporter.
Can I ask, is it not a free pass, but is it a mitigating factor when you try and go back even 24 hours to previewing this game and Atletico Madrid? There's a lot of question marks about what Atletico Madrid are this season, where like they've drawn as many games 2-2, more games 2-2 than they've won games 1-0. This kind of robust, I guess, deep defensive line element of Atletico Madrid had somewhat changed this season, but yet there was an expectation that maybe on a Champions League night against Manchester United they would go back to the sort of Atletico that beat Liverpool 2 seasons ago. That Rangnick himself just wasn't sure and was ultimately proved wrong in his prediction about what way Atletico would set up, and that he reacted well when he did realise what version of Atletico would show up. Is that giving him too much credit?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see anything in that Manchester United setup last night. Even Lindelof at right back. I'm saying, we thought Lamar would play out. I don't think he did. I didn't get an indicator of that even in terms. It felt to me as if, well, Lindelof had a great game at the weekend. I had to keep him in the team. You could easily flip that the other way and say he actually wasn't strong enough in terms of taking the strong decision. Varane's going to come back in, so either Maguire or Lindelof has to step out. It's as simple as that.
We're going to get to Harry Maguire. Don't worry. We're going to get to Harry Maguire, Kenny.
Take your pick between Diallo and Wan-Bissaka. I've seen it with managers before. The easy decision in those circumstances is to play your more experienced, the bigger personalities, keep them on the pitch, almost keep them on side, which is what he did last night. But I didn't see anything there set up last night that I thought, that's interesting. He's changed that. He's tweaked with that because of what he's going to potentially face tonight. I mean, in terms of the setup, it was no different. The front, the midfield too. You couldn't say Pogba and Fred in central midfield. Fernandes playing off the front, his usual number 10 position. Sancho and Rashford off the flanks. Ronaldo. There was nothing special. There was nothing unusual. The shape of the team, the personnel. There was no indicators there. Oh, this is interesting. What he's actually doing, because potentially what's going to come at him from Atletico Madrid. So I don't think there was. I didn't think he overthought it in terms of how Atletico were going to play. Pretty predictable Atletico, that kind of high press, high energy, particularly in the early part of the game, first half. That kind of dropped off second half, and United's kind of slowly worked their way back into the game. So they didn't show me anything in particular, Atletico, in terms of how they played. It was difficult to say actually at times. They kind of morphed a little bit in terms of their formation. At times it looked like a back five, narrow three in midfield and a front two, but that was almost 4-4-2 at times as well. They're actually quite flexible in terms of how they kind of set up, but they did drop off second half, and to be fair to United, they wrestled their way, they kind of dragged their way back into the game. So that was kind of impressed. It wasn't the highest quality game, in terms of what we were seeing, but
well, if we're talking about high quality headers, though, I mean, the Joao Felix goal was pretty special. As a heading aficionado yourself, Kenny, I mean, you were probably sitting back at that and you're like, wow, Felix hooked this to my veins. What give us a rating out of 10 on that header.
Well, considering the only league goal that I scored in my professional career actually came about as a result of a diving header.
Was it your dive?
There's no video footage available of that. Unfortunately, you'll have to take me word of it.
Liam Brady against Belgium, Frank Stapleton against Belgium in '86, kind of diving header.
I'd say Van Persie.
Was it Alan Sunderland, the Cup final Arsenal? You'd know this, Ger, wouldn't you? Late 70s.
Way before my time. Legitimately way before
my time. Was that Liam heading down the left, ball in Wembley? Alan Sunderland, was it? Near post header. Kind of iconic headers, obviously we're talking about goals, but this was, you're right, this was pretty special because he was literally, almost had to throw himself at the ball, didn't he? Joao Felix, it was a brilliant header, so the time and just get the accuracy was fantastic. I mean, I don't know, you can always pick goals apart. I think it's interesting on the goal, he gets a little run on Harry Maguire, so it's amazing really. Maguire, you're saying we're going to talk about him, but it's just unfortunately it's the way he's made. You can see Joao Felix get that run a split second before him, he's in motion. I think when they were showing the replay of the game last, they freeze it when the ball's being delivered off the foot of Lodi on the left hand side. And if you look at Maguire and Joao Felix is he's in motion, so his momentum's taking him forward, and Harry Maguire at that moment is flat footed. So now immediately he's got to change his body shape, Maguire, and actually accelerate and try and match Joao Felix. That just can't happen. He can't shift that amount of body weight in that quick a time that he needs to do. He either needs to read it earlier and be smarter, step across the player, put himself between the player and in the line where he wants to make the run, or actually just recover earlier into the space and actually give himself an extra yard or two start on the player. One or two of those two things has to happen, because fundamentally he hasn't got the kind of leg speed, the athleticism to deal with that type of run. As great a ball as it was and as great a header as it was, like I've said to you before, there's never been a goal scored that couldn't have been defended better. So just although you couldn't say, Maguire's had a stinker there, you know what I mean, put that in his portfolio, his fault, another goal.
If you've never seen it before, you're thinking amazing goal, but the fact that it kind of encapsulates so much of the issues that Harry Maguire has, it's a good example of just a little bit that stops him from being a top quality defender.
Yeah, no, you're right. He's not perfect. He's fallible. It's as simple as that. He's got his frailties, and he had them when he walked in the door at Manchester. And the things that we're talking about there have always been there.
Yeah, he hasn't got any better, has he?
No,
like you wouldn't say...
no, that'll never get any better. That kind of athleticism.
But good coaching and experience, you would expect the.
Oh yeah, you can mitigate against it, absolutely.
And there's no evidence of the mitigation of his faults in his career so far at United, is there? Like, he hasn't become a better player He hasn't.
For me, I think it's confidence with him. I think he's actually a good reader of the game, Maguire. I think it's what helped him to get to this point to begin with, because things that we're talking about in terms of lack of athleticism and that kind of speed, I think he recognises that, and to counteract that, I think he actually reads the game very well. And if you remember his first kind of 6 months, you could argue year at United, we weren't talking a huge amount about this. It was there. There was a couple of small examples of it. We weren't seeing a huge amount of it, probably because of reasons that we're talking about, because he's clever, because he drops into this space early, anticipates things, gets players around him, that kind of game intelligence you were talking about. I think he's got a bit of that to him. But unfortunately for me, it's almost a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
You know, he's made a few mistakes, high profile. They've been commented on. People are talking about him. That can't be. I've never had that. That can't be easy.
What's the way out for Manchester United and Harry Maguire? How do they get somebody to take him off their hands and look to move on? Because
it's not a guarantee that'll happen. I mean, I think there's an argument there for we got to keep this fella. We got to help rebuild his confidence. There's still enough there in terms of, we know the qualities that he has, his football and ability. He's pretty dominant in both penalty boxes in terms of early. I'm talking.
We call this the fallacy of sunk costs, where you try and recover your investment, even though you pour more and more money down the hole, and the hole gets deeper.
But in terms of centre halves in the modern game, Jay, the perceptions change. Like in terms of what modern day manager and coaches are looking for. Back in my day, was like, can you head it, tackle, reading the game? Does he organise? Is he a good talker?
He can do all that.
So all these type of things. But how quick is he over the ground? But it was defensive. You're tick boxing, real kind of the fundamentals, the building blocks of being a defender. But that conversation changed some time ago to, well, how good is he on the ball? You know, can he step into midfield? Can he be the extra man? Can he break the lines with his passing? That type of thing became more into the equation. It was more around the discussion in terms of this is what we're after in the centre half. So now suddenly the fact that he's actually not the quickest thing on two legs, he struggles a little bit in his recovery. Suddenly that's it's a factor, but you know what? It's not the be all and end all. You know what I mean? Because he'll go and get us half a dozen goals over the course of the season, set pieces. He's actually got the bit to step into midfield and set our attacks off. You know, this is what
you think he can do that?
But I think there's an argument there. It's not an argument I'd make. I've got to be honest with you. And
your argument, I think would be, if we can get something back from him, let's get something back from him and try and find the next player who is actually going to be genuinely, potentially world class. Because we've seen his ceiling. He's as good as he's going to get for us. Maybe with a bit of better coaching, some world-renowned defensive coach comes in and works with him, or a manager comes in and goes, yeah, you're my guy, and he steps up to the best level he can be. And the very best level he can be is like not a centre-back that any of the other top four teams really want. Yeah,
and unfortunately for Harry Maguire, the top managers now, the biggest clubs, generally speaking, give or take, want to play the same way. They want to play that high-pressing game, and to play a high-pressing game, you need to be able to commit the majority of your team high up the pitch more often than not. And you need to be comfortable isolating your two centre halves in 1v1 situations for a fair chunk of the game. You have to have the confidence in your two centre halves to do that. And Harry Maguire will never be comfortable in that situation. So now you have to compromise, and now there's a massive knock-on effect in terms
everywhere.
Of how you actually set up.
You can't press.
Exactly. Now you got to drop. You got to play more of a lower defensive block. Because of Harry Maguire, you got to get people around. You got to narrow up your fullbacks a little bit,
and that's not what's happening in world football.
Is that too much a price? But I think it probably is.
Right.
So if you're asking me what I do, what Harry Maguire goes out the door and somebody gets as good a deal, as much money as you can for him, I think somebody will probably pay you 35 million for Harry Maguire. For the reasons that I'm saying, the qualities that he has. He's
a 30 to 35 million player.
So I think you suck it up, you take the money, and you go. And
Dear
you go
Newcastle.
Reinvest.
Are you interested in talking to us about any of our players? We find that they will exceed your expectations, particularly if they're very low. Harry Maguire is available for 25 million.
No, I think you're right. I think that's it. You got to get somebody who's going to take him off your hands on a big wage there, so that kind of reduces potentially the pool of clubs who are going to take him on. But that's a big decision for the new manager when he comes in. That's a real big decision. I think you got to make that one quickly. Whether you're going to try and build a team around him, you think he's got those qualities are good enough to build a team and suck up the deficiencies, or no, we go again.
Okay, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on the show. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We've obviously been talking with Kenny about the Champions League stuff, and we'll talk about Liverpool in a moment. Our World Cup of Manchester United defenders. This is inspired by Daniel Harrison, yesterday's show. We'll talk to you about the sports pages and the sports news between 8:30 and 8:35. John Duggan. Power rankings for hurling at 8:40. Miguel Flatow is a Mexican film director who is in Dublin at the moment with a movie that is screening tonight in the Irish Film Festival, Dublin Film Festival, and a clip from Wednesday Night Rugby at 9:30 to play you out, as it looks like Sexton's going to start. Certainly that was he was out yesterday saying, I'm fit and ready to go. Yeah, if you're doing media the week of the game and then don't start, you're either A, Seamus Coleman, or B, you've been screwed over in a different way. So just quick tangent here, sorry. There is no video evidence of your goal online, Kenny. I've been frantically scrambling. It was against Portsmouth in a 2-2 draw in April 1994. But you did score in the Anglo-Italian Cup as well, but unfortunately no evidence of that, Kenny.
Conspiracy,
didn't televise the Anglo-Italian
theorists
Cup.
Would have a field day with that.
So you 2 goals, not
How
one.
was that possible? How was that possible? Nothing on camera.
In the age of the internet. Nothing from April 1994.
Thank God.
But if anybody out there, any Millwall or Portsmouth fans have any footage of that, we would... do
you want me to describe my goal against Charlton? Do you want a description of that?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Anglo-Italian, 30 yards, screamer, left foot.
No way.
Left foot. I remember counting the amount of bobbles as it was on its way towards the goal. I counted 6 before the last bobble took it over the outstretched arm of Bob Boulder, who was the Charlton goalkeeper at the time, you'll remember, and trickled into the corner of the net.
Look, they all count.
They all count, lad. They all count.
Did you take many shots? Like, is your efficiency rating unbelievably high? 1 header on target, 1 goal, 1 shot on target, 1 goal.
I'd say my completion rate is probably about 93%. It has to be. So I probably took about less than.
You just needed a manager to put his arm around you and go, you go for it, Kenny. Every time you take a header, every time you take a shot, it's a goal.
Do you know what it was? When first few years, when I remember being at Millwall, and as you do, young pros and that, in digs, and got into the training ground early most days and left late. Just what else was there to do? I wasn't heading down the bookies or the booze with the lads at all.
Boozing or gambling, that was it.
But so get in early, coaches bag of balls out, and the forwards would come in. So I'd be dragged out. Shooting, I'd be there smashing balls, curling balls into the top corner, left foot. I think I'm putting something funny little way. I think it kind of helped me. Helped me left foot. My left foot was terrible when I went over. Kind of got me a little bit stronger, and I just kind of joined in. The coach obviously felt a bit of sympathy from me, like, oh Jesus Christ, look at this young fella, come on over, cross and whatever it was. So without talking myself up, I wasn't obviously Robbie Fowler-esque in terms of me finishing, but I'd walk off the training pitch and I'd think,
I can do this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be embarrassed by being out in the forwards, side foot, corner, back of the net, all well and good. But come match day,
nice.
Come match day, yeah, just could never take that into a game. Never had the kind of, I don't even know what you'd call it, maybe confidence, personality. Once I got into that part of the pitch, and I used, because I played full back, I had to play full back my first few years because I couldn't play centre half, wasn't big enough, strong enough, so they slung me out at right back, and I had to learn how to get forward, and so I would get myself into those positions, but always it was just couldn't get beyond that kind of hot potato, always looking for the next to set somebody in, cross a sideways pass. Never had that confidence to kind of, well, hold on, you've been doing this all week on the training ground with the lads. Just couldn't take it in, whatever it was, the self-confidence thing. I don't know what, lack of belief, or it might have been a bit of those things, maybe subconsciously lurking.
Did you ever speak to a coach about it? Is like, so in this scenario, honestly, because Kev says the same thing.
Speak to a coach about it?
Yeah.
About what?
About so I can do this in training, and when I get into a match situation, I can't.
No,
because that would have been showing weakness.
No.
But is that not exactly the type of thing now? In retrospect, if you could tip yourself on the shoulder at 16 and go, try it in a match, go and do it, and if it screws up, no one's going to say anything to you, because they all screw up as well.
No, I always, as I went through the game, and I came across players, a lot of players, young players with a lot of self-confidence, maybe some players too much, who kind of went against them, but generally speaking, I always admired when I saw young players coming through or looking to break through, and they were like, they had it in them, that bit of confidence in, you couldn't kind of talk them down, and I always used to think, wow, I kind of admired that. I thought, wow.
But it's fake in many respects.
No, it's not. No, this is genuine kids who really kind of backed themselves, and maybe they didn't have, you know, in terms of the individual qualities, but that got them. That kind of, they got more out of themselves before, because they really kind of backed themselves, had this inbuilt confidence within themselves, and looking back, I think you're right. It probably would have helped. Have a little bit more of that. Probably would have.
A sports psychologist would have fixed that in like 2 sessions. Honestly, no. In retrospect,
yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. And,
but if you were a coach
right.
now, if you're coaching now, and you're
no, you're right. And if I saw a young player, I'd like to think as a coach, I'd take that. That would be my responsibility as a coach. I wouldn't be kind of, you know, directing that player necessarily to see a psychologist. I'd see that as my job as a coach in terms of getting into the heads of players. But you're right. If you got those kind of people around you, and you think players could benefit, those psychologists were coming in, and I saw teammates go in there to those 1v1 sessions, and I couldn't bring myself to do it, to be honest with you. But I did see players benefit from it, whatever it was, get them straight in the head, and whatever it was, whatever they say, whatever little indicators, pictures that they give them, I did see players kind of grow a little bit in that respect. And I did see the benefit. I had to, not begrudgingly, but it was almost a case, well, it's not for me, but I can see how this is kind of helping. So I'd never talk it down. But back in the day, it just didn't happen, and I just didn't have it in me, to be honest with you. Clearly.
Very interesting.
as it described in the my goal scored and record.
Yeah, it's because it wasn't that, like me, it just gets brought up so much, and unfairly so. But again, we didn't see those 2 goals. It wouldn't have got brought up so much, not scoring goals, if we'd seen those 2 goals. So again, anybody would put footage out there. Google
wasn't around then. Do you know, up in the satellite coming, now the houses.
Yeah.
You couldn't train that on the old den back in.
It was the old den, was it? Were they both the old den? Right. Ah, nice.
No, Fratton Park.
Nice. Also very atmospheric.
Oh, great stadium. Thankfully that's still around. For how much longer I don't know, but yeah, used to love me football. Atmosphere down there was electric. Really kind of vocal home support. I think somebody had the bell. Was it one of them? They had it.
There's always one. There's always one. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, with your best face forward with our new and improved razors. 11 minutes past 8. Kenny's staying with us. We're going to go through the World Cup of Manchester United's greatest ever centre-backs. This is not going back that far. It's only since the Ferguson era.
No, since the start of football, so like 1992.
Okay, perfect. We have packed show still to come. We'll hear from John Duggan, Mexican filmmaker Miguel Flatow. We're talking hurling with Will O'Callaghan, all of that. But Manchester United's centre-back World Cup next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Are you a fan of the small ball?
The only sport I can think of where no rims makes a huge difference is baseball. The weight of the baseball is 145 grams, so that's 30 grams heavier than a sliotar. So the weight of the ball has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Jealous of all the inside analysis and crack on the football pod? Well, we've got you covered with the Hurling pod. Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season.
King Lynch hurled the year, and it was so good, give it from next year.
Coming soon to OTB Sports.
That's always going to be a problem, really, where we are based in the West. It's obviously such a massive Gaelic area, all around Connacht and up Donegal. In particular, Donegal, because they're a senior team, they're usually competing or trying to compete for an All-Ireland final, like the last few years at least. And like there's players who are up there at the moment, like Karen, you would know Geraldine McLaughlin, who played like the World Student Games. Roisin McCafferty. An exceptional talent at the moment, Amy Boyle-Carr, who actually has a senior Irish international cap, and unfortunately she's not even playing with us at the moment, even though she's just based in Donegal because of Gaelic commitments. So we are touching base with all these players, and trying to obviously encourage them as much as we can to come into the soccer. But as this area is such a massive Gaelic area, they're obviously preoccupied until at least summertime. So that's always going to be a problem. Then you have the likes of Aileen Gilroy, Rachel Cairns, who are over in, and Sarah Rowe, who are over in Australia at the moment, obviously playing ball over there. All 3 of them are literally only from an hour up the road. So technically we would be their closest club to play for. Rachel and Aileen in particular, have all went to IT Sligo, so they have that connection with Sligo already. So when you think about it, if you could add them 5 or 6 players, alone, I would say we'd be competing up the top of the league.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, 14 minutes past 8 this morning. You'll have heard in the ad break there, Sligo Rovers' Emma Hansbury and their club CEO Colin Feely, who were the guests this week on the Koi Gig Pod with Karen Duggan and Kathy McNamee on this week's episode. You can get the Koi Gig Pod on the OTB Sports Podcast Network. Just search for Koi Gig or get it on the OTB Sports app. That's the easiest place to get us. And it's brought to you every week in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. That full episode is there right now in all the usual spots. You can watch it back on the YouTube channel as well if you want to see it. Now, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Owen, this is your baby off the back of a piece that we did with Daniel Harris yesterday. There was a big fight in the ad break there. I had to separate Kenny and Owen from when football started. Owen made a wise crack. Kenny did not appreciate it.
No. By the way, just a note, and everybody watching at home will notice this, but when Ger says this is your baby, he probably thinks that this piece is going to be awful and has already apportioned blame to somebody else.
Quietly judging you.
So we're going with... So basically, a conversation came up in our piece with Daniel Harris yesterday, comparing, Harry Maguire to defenders during the Ferguson era, such as Wes Brown, for example, Steve Bruce, for example, Gary Pallister,
William
for example.
Prunier.
So we decided to do a World Cup of Manchester United defenders in the Alex Ferguson era, basically 90s onwards. I mean, it's post-Paul McGrath, basically, because we all know that Paul McGrath would waltz home with this. So post-Paul McGrath, Manchester United defenders, we've picked an arbitrary enough top 16, last 16 let's call it, not necessarily the top 16, and we're going to put them head-to-head until we get Kenny Cunningham's World Cup champion of Manchester United defenders. So our first clash in the last 16 this morning, Kenny, and you can be brief enough with these last 16 games because a couple of them are fairly straightforward. Nemanja Vidic versus Chris Smalling. Who is the better defender? Smalling's still playing.
Now, by the way, we only have like 8 minutes for this, so we don't need...
Okay, so we do need rapid fire then. Yeah. Vidic is true. Eric Bailly versus David May. May. Stam versus Mikhail Silvestre.
Really? David May ahead of Eric Bailly?
Okay.
Easy.
Easy?
Stam is in. Wes Brown versus Gary
You're putting these names up. You're not reacting to what I'm saying. I thought you were going to put the names.
It's
only about 15 letters. I thought you're prolific on the computer. You can't put the names bloody up. Go on, keep going.
Wes Brown versus Gary Pallister.
Pallister.
No.
Oh.
Easy.
No.
Easy?
This is the easiest quiz show I've ever played.
This is a good one. Steve Bruce versus Johnny Evans.
Oh. Forced difficult call. Now I'm gonna ask you a question. Are you talking Johnny Evans in terms of the length of his duration of his career, or just at that time when he was at Manchester United?
Do you know, to make it more interesting, we can go duration of career.
Who had the better?
No, I actually think you're complicating it by saying
I know, I'm making it harder on you.
Roll back. No, what I would say is I think it was a big mistake Manchester United made letting Johnny Evans go. I thought his partnership with Vidic towards the tail end of Vidic's career there was absolutely outstanding. He was developing into a top class centre-half and should have stayed at Manchester. So I'm going to say that. But for the amount of time that he spent there in comparison to Steve Bruce, I'd have to say Steve Bruce.
Steve Bruce, okay. So Steve Bruce wins.
I think Johnny Evans is critically underrated. Has had an excellent career.
I don't think he's underrated now. I think people came to appreciate at Leicester how good that he actually was, but I don't think people knew it. Who's it came? Was it Van Gaal who came in and showed him out the door? He had one injury, I think it was, and he was out quickly. I think it was Van Gaal. I can't remember. I don't think it was David Moyes.
Was it West Brom for $1.5 million?
But it was a massive mistake. He came to Sunderland when I was there. He was 18. It was me last year in football. Well, I wasn't playing football, to be honest with you, last year. I don't know what I was playing, but well, it wasn't a game I loved. I was struggling basically, is what I'm saying. He came in on loan. Roy brought him in, and within, I'd say, a week on the training pitch, I thought, wow, this kid it's going to be a world beater. I thought he was going to be Manchester United
captain,
legend. Yeah, the whole shebang. I think it could have happened for him. Probably think it should have happened for him, through no fault of his own. Anyway, I'll go with Steve Bruce for the reasons that I'm saying, just restricted to their time at the club.
Harry Maguire versus Laurent Blanc.
Straight away. Straight away. It's Laurent Blanc at Man United. It's not Laurent Blanc like...
Oh, I'm thinking... No, do you know what? Do you know what I'm going to factor in here? No, I... What are you talking about Laurent Blanc?
I'm just saying. I'm saying Laurent Blanc at Man United was like a husk of a human being. By that stage, he was completely washed up and finished.
No, it's
like,
true.
I would have been good.
I'm falling for Owens. Yeah, you're right. I'm getting nostalgic. I'm looking at Laurent Blanc at his best. No, I think you're right. And this is Harry Maguire's best, is it? Are we saying Harry Maguire's best at the moment?
Well, so here's the thing. This is supposed to give us the opportunity to go Harry Maguire versus some of these people, but obviously, and you fix it so he'd win the first one easily, and already we've blown it up.
No, you're right. He was past his best, Laurent Blanc. But I remember a couple of the lads at United actually talking. I think Roy was one of them, to be fair, not betraying the confidence, saying they love playing with him, Blanc, even at that stage of his career.
Betray all the confidence you want at this stage. It's over.
And the big thing was, he just would always want the ball.
Right.
Always take responsibility, get on the ball and play, kind of real kind of personality, etc. But you're right, he wasn't at his best by the time he went to Manchester United. But I think that's a tough call, even in terms of Harry Maguire.
So we're going Maguire?
I got Blanc.
Okay, so
in that case, if it was Harry Maguire versus Johnny Evans, who are you going?
Oh, Johnny Evans.
Harry Maguire versus Steve Bruce?
Steve Bruce.
Okay.
Harry Maguire versus Wes Brown.
Wes Brown, better defender. But he was very limited in terms of ball playing ability, and probably needed a big one alongside him because he wasn't as dominant as Harry Maguire in the air, and certainly not in both boxes. But in terms of it, like 1-to-1, we're talking about 1-to-1, defending your area of the pitch, being isolated and have to deal with Wes Brown all day. So it depends which of those attributes you kind of value more.
Yeah, I mean, suppose. They might have been a reasonable partnership.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Wes Brown might have covered for many of the faults that Harry Maguire has. Like, that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, but then you're bringing in partnerships, then you're, forget it, we don't know where we're heading off, and all sorts of directions.
It's already complicated enough as it is. Ronnie Johnson versus Henning Berg.
Johnson.
That's
probably a little bit more rounded.
And then finally in the round of 16, sorry, Ger.
People are complaining. Wes Brown, what about his cross to Ronaldo in the Champions League final? Headed goal versus Chelsea. That there was enough there to suggest that he had the ball playing ability that Maguire has as well.
Oh no, he hadn't got the ability to step forward in possession and break the lines and draw people to him. He wasn't as. I think Maguire is quite exceptional in that respect. I mean, a couple of years ago, you looked at him and probably thought there's not too many better than him in that respect. That was what everybody was talking about.
It seems to have slowed down. It seems to be very
seen him
telegraphed.
Yeah, enough of it. Again, for me, like confidence. That's how when confidence gets drained out, Jared, it affects every facet of your game. You almost go into your shell a little bit, but he has it in him. He showed it less. He showed it with England. He showed it the first year, I'd say, at Manchester United. That kind of those ball carrying qualities which he has. He was definitely better than Wes Brown in that respect. I'm a massive fan of Wes Brown, but for different reasons.
Victor Lindelof versus Rio Ferdinand is the last clash in our last 16. It's Rio Ferdinand, isn't it? Good thing I've already literally saved in the graphic before we even asked you for that one, so it's a foregone conclusion. That's how you do. That's how you get ahead of it. So we will hopefully have an updated graphic on screen very shortly indeed, as we move on to.
Here we go.
Oh, Tommy's got it done.
That's what I'm after.
Tommy's got a nicer graphic done than I do actually, so fair play to him. Okay, quarterfinals. Nemanja Vidic.
We're still going. We're ploughing on.
We are, of course.
All right.
That's how World Cup works.
I thought we were going to park it for a week.
No.
Like the FA Cup rounds.
There's a last 16 joke in there somewhere.
No, there's imminent action.
Six Nations, they have that.
The break weeks, the random break weeks, yeah.
I'll go straight in. Right, go.
Nemanja Vidic versus David May.
Vidic.
Jaap Stam versus Gary Pallister.
Stam.
Steve Bruce versus Laurent Blanc.
Bruce.
Ronnie Johnson versus Rio Ferdinand. Okay, so we got Ferdinand, Bruce, Stam, Vidic.
Is this because you played under Steve Bruce or something? Did you play under Steve Bruce? You did you?
Oh, he managed me at Birmingham.
Yeah.
Oh, I was always a big fan of him as a player.
Right. Okay. He's survived much longer in this bracket than I thought he would. It's like his managerial career. He's still getting gigs.
People underestimate how good he was. He's got that bit of a Wes Brown reputation. Basics, headed, kick it, that type of thing. But he was a far better footballer, I think, than some people appreciate. I remember going in at Birmingham, and it wouldn't be that, maybe 38 when he took on the job up there, and he was carrying a bit of timber even then. He was carrying timber like when he finished his career. But he joined in the five-a-sides on a Friday, which wasn't untypical then. Worst thing he could ever do. How managers got away with, I don't know. Mick was the worst.
Kicking players.
Mick McCarthy. Mick was Steve wouldn't get around kicking players. Mick was a different beast. But what surprised me was his quality on the ball. In the five-a-side, he wasn't running past people, dropping a shoulder and going. But in terms of receiving the ball, working the ball, being cut, actually took me aback.
Right.
How good he
still
was.
Could have played then at that stage.
No, he could. he could have played five-a-side. Right. He could have played a professional five-a-side league, maybe for the over 35s. But just making the point, he was a far better rounded player and far better in possession maybe than some people give him credit for. But he played alongside Pallister, and Pallister was perceived to be kind of royalty, wasn't it? In terms he glided over the ground, very comfortable on the ball, and he was like Stickers. He was the one getting the 18 stitches across his forehead and stick his head in. He was fearless, wasn't he?
Pallister got all the England caps, and he never obviously got any.
Yeah, he didn't get any. He was very unfortunate. He was in good company, but I think he was very unfortunate in that respect. Probably deserving of more. But he was a very, very good all-round player and got everything out of him. What I'd say, I think he got everything out of what he had. In terms of, I wouldn't say natural. Maybe Tanya had some real qualities, don't get me wrong, but kind of got the best out of what he had.
What was the crack with Mick in the five-a-sides?
Mick is just lamp you.
That was it.
We had a lad who came down, again not betraying confidence. We had a lad who came down. We took a lad on loan from the Midlands, very good footballer, clever little operator lads. Ooh, a tasty. Ooh, he'll help us. Boom, boom, boom. First week training, five-a-side mix involved. They're playing against each other, and this lad, don't talk about self-confidence, this lad had bags of it, and he wasn't like he hadn't 200 games under his belt, just breaking onto the scene, but real quality. Still not going to mention his name. So starts playing up a bit with Mick, because Mick's legs had gone a little bit, as obviously most managers.
What age was he at that age?
I think it was probably the same, 30, 38.
Where's this, Sunderland?
No, this is Millwall. So the ball's getting played up to him, and he's like dropping the couple of times, dropped the shot, left Mick a couple of times, and then next time the ball's come up, he's kind of dropped it, put it between his legs, give it the away. took it the other side of Mick. And for us who had a bit of experience with Mick, and those of us who played along Mick, thought, oh no, you could see it coming. It was like a car crash coming. You thought, oh, next ball. Everybody knew it. And the next ball came to his feet, and Mick just whoosh, cleaned them out from behind. You know, the classic goal.
Oh yeah,
tackle
straight
from
red.
Behind. Yeah, he was out. His session was over. Physio, the whole shebang, and
did he make it? Did he play again? Did he play for the team?
No, he didn't. I don't think he did. To be honest, he didn't it wasn't kind of A&E or anything like that. But he literally took him out. That was.
You got to know in fairness, you got to know the pecking order, and respect your elders.
Know people. That. You just got to know people. Forget about the pecking order.
Know people, yeah, it's good. It's a life lesson there. We do our semi-finals,
and he was the Ireland manager 6 weeks later.
Yeah, semi-finals here. Nemanja Vidic versus Stam.
Stam.
Oh, that's a big call.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Stam. I played against Stam. There was a period when he played for United over a period of a year or two, Stam. We're talking about breaking players down, strengths, kind of weaknesses, but I couldn't find one in Stam. Vidic, to a small extent, maybe you could argue that kind of ball playing ability, like being speed. Vidic wasn't slow, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't a speedster either. You could argue at times somebody with real kind of pace who isolated him could get the better of him. Maybe at times if you're nitpicking. Stam for a period of time at Manchester, and I looked at him, and I must have played against him a couple of times and thought, I don't know where you go against. There's nothing there. He was a machine, physically tall. It's like a bodybuilder, wasn't he? But he could. We're talking about Maguire, just can't carry the weight.
Yeah.
I mean, he was huge. He's like a cruiserweight boxer, but he could carry the weight and travel at speed as well. Dynamic in his movement, everything.
It never made sense. The notion of a falling out with the Neville brothers never made sense for the reason for the transfer. Something else must have happened. Something else.
Yeah,
because he was so good. And he was still so
wasn't
good
it some
for
of his
another couple
book?
of years
Wasn't it an autobiography? And Ferguson took offence.
He wrote a book, and there was some stuff about the.
Oh, that was it about, and he mentioned he referenced the Neville brothers, didn't he? Phil and
busy seas was the phrase he used about them. Which we can't say on a breakfast show, but you know what it is. I don't understand how that would be enough for Ferguson. Like, Ferguson probably thought the same about some of his players. It was like, yeah, they probably are a bit busy, but that's fine. I want them to be. It didn't seem like it was that.
I take your point. I'd be surprised if it was just that, though.
It's an overreaction.
He must have had covered there. He must have felt there was a sense of there's something coming down there. I'll just preempt it. This is going to happen anyway. There's a natural evolution. He's going to go. Because you're right. Because at the level he was at, you couldn't get near him. You couldn't touch him. He was an absolute animal. I don't mean animal in terms of totally out of control, kicking people.
No,
he was totally controlled, playing at.
He was a beast.
Yeah.
He
was fearsome.
It's far from an exact science, but Jaap Stam came in at 12th in the Ballon d'Or voting in '99. Vidic was at 16 in the 2009 Ballon d'Or voting. So maybe that justifies your selection.
Oh, there's very little between them. Yeah. Both of them outstanding.
So Stam gets into the final, and then the other semi-finalist, Steve Bruce against Rio Ferdinand.
Yeah, I got to give it to Ferdinand.
Right.
Yeah, I got to give it to Ferdinand just as his all-round game. You had his Rolls Royce Ferdinand. I'm tempted to kind of almost didn't want to involve himself in certain aspects of the game, like some of those centre halves there. Wes Brown, Steve Bruce, rolled the sleeves up in the trenches, lads. Kind of here we go. Ferdinand almost took a step back. And kind of took a step around that, if you understand what I'm saying. But he didn't need to, because his movement, athlete, and he was a very good reader of the game. He stayed on his feet a lot of the time, and I'm not going past me, you can't run me. That type of thing. Read the game well, and again, probably be ahead of his time in terms of his ability with the ball at his feet. Probably could have played midfield for other clubs and stuff, but he was I'd have to say Ferdinand.
You've created a tricky final for yourself, so Jaap Stam against Rio Ferdinand.
Do you know what? Yeah, I wouldn't have automatically Stam, at the onset, but I couldn't. I have to put him there in terms of what you've put in front of me. So that's tough.
Yeah,
I think this is where the argument comes in. You pick Ferdinand, who you playing alongside him, because it's all about partnerships, isn't it? For me, particularly at centre half, probably as opposed to any other position. Centre midfield partnerships, centre forward partnerships to an extent, but that centre half partnership in terms of how they complement each other, how they work together. The dynamic is absolutely huge in terms of how good that they are. So I think this is an example where if you choose, it almost has to be who do you put in alongside him. But I think, at their very best, if you're saying at their very best, Ferdinand longer at Manchester. I wouldn't give it to Ferdinand because he was there long. That's pretty weak. I was there longer at Manchester United. Higher level of consistency during the time was there. Stam wasn't there as long. But I think when they're both at their best at Manchester United, it'd be interesting if you spoke to forwards who played against them, centre forwards at their peak, and you asked some of the best centre forwards, who would have troubled you more? Who would you have struggled up against? Who would you have thought? Who would you have peeled on, basically, during the game? And you looked at both of them centre halves, Stam at his prime and Ferdinand. Who would you thought, I'll peel on him off his shoulder? I might have half a chance against this fella. That's a tough call. I might go with Stam.
Stam as the winner, or Stam as the person you're peeling off?
No, as the winner.
The winner, okay. Jaap Stam is your winner. There he is in all his shining glory on screen.
That's in the Champions League final in '99, obviously.
Well done. A good World Cup. Well completed. Jaap Stam, a worthy winner, I think.
That's not going to be popular, is it? Shock.
I don't know about that.
It's not one that would have jumped. If you put people on the spot and ask them that question, have to think on their feet, I'd imagine very low percentage. I'm actually a little bit surprised myself that I put up there.
There you go.
You would be on that one.
Ferdinand had 12 years at United.
Yeah, so I'm taking that longevity thing out, Ger.
Yeah.
I always think that's a little bit weak, you know what I mean?
Well, I would agree with you in some instances.
Can't be the overriding factor.
To be at the club for so long, where there's competition.
Yeah, but you've just made the counter argument for me. Why Stam didn't leave there because he was on the slide.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
He was dropping out. You know what I mean? So
it just doesn't make any sense.
So I don't think you can factor that into the argument. Some people
Levels
would.
aren't so precious that they can't stand up for themselves. They could have just had it out.
There's two of them.
It doesn't make any sense. Exactly. They could have tag teamed them, had a row, and moved on.
I think you're right, considering how, say, someone like Cantona was dealt with there, and everybody's spoken about it there who played with Cantona, even Ferguson himself, lawn to himself, lads all suited and booted, he'd roll in with his,
white,
open
ruffled, that was the famous one.
Exactly, all that type of thing. And people would suck that up, they suffered it because, well, it was Eric, we know the qualities that he has, he makes us better. Well, I think you could make that argument for a Stam as well. On the opposite end of the pitch at that time when he was at his very best.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that probably always be a small mystery.
Yeah. All right. It's 8:34 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can tweet us at Off the Ball AM, or of course you can WhatsApp us 087 918 180. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Ger, Owen and Kenny, how are you doing?
Yeah, we're very good. How are you?
You're not too bad, thanks. It's a Thursday. It's Virtual Insanity Day, so.
Ask John. Put him on the spot on. Straight away, what have we been talking about?
Greatest Manchester United central defender in the Alex Ferguson era onwards.
Go.
Rio Ferdinand.
Oh. So it
surprised me.
Finalist.
It doesn't surprise me.
It came down to Ferdinand versus Stam, right? And essentially what we're asking you for is who had the highest height, not who had the longest period of sustained greatness. Who reached the level of highest excellence as a defender?
Rio Ferdinand, I would say.
Good shout, in fairness. I mean, he was a finalist, John,
It was close.
Yeah.
It was close.
This is my point.
We make up the criteria as we go along. And
I think John will be in the majority in that respect.
Well, it was an instinctive answer, lads. So
yeah, and I think
it's a good answer. It's a good answer.
I saw Vidic and Ferdinand play against Tottenham actually in 2007 when Ronaldo was on the wing, and it was world champion football, and there was 2 to 3 years there where they were the best in the world. And I know Stam around 99 was very much the fulcrum, and they should never have sold him. And obviously the book didn't go down very well, but I just think over a longer period of time, I think Ferdinand was really a huge part of that second or third wave of Ferguson's teams.
And John's right in what he says. If you were to ask me the best partnership during the Ferguson era, I'd probably say what John said. Just in terms of what we're talking about in terms of partnerships and
the thing is that they could have played together and it would have been brilliant as well. Like for a long period of time. I think Ferdinand made Vidic look really good. Now, I'm not saying Vidic wasn't good, but like there were weaknesses. There were times where Fernando Torres did him, and you're like, well, I didn't see Stam get done like that. And look, we're splitting hairs. We're picking nits, as they say. John, what's going on? We've got to talk to you about Antonio Conte. Is that where you want to start? I mean, maybe you don't want to start there, but that's where we should start.
For anybody just joining the show on OTB AM this morning, just to go through the news. Anthony Elanga, 2 goals in as many games, 19 years of age. Ralph Rangnick praising him after the 1-1 draw against Atletico Madrid in Spain last night. Paul Pogba was once again inconsistent. Victor Lindelof playing on the right of defence wasn't a good decision to employ him there, and it didn't really work out. And it's going to be really interesting, lads, to see what happens when we've no away goals now, because United normally have an away goal to bring to Old Trafford on March the 15th. They don't now, but I think they'll be happy with that result, because once again it was not a completely 90-minute performance from Manchester United, who did improve in the second half against Atletico, but Atletico themselves had the players out injured. So that was a 1-1 draw. Benfica and Ajax a 2-2 draw. Liverpool really hitting their groove now. It's in their hands. They've now overturned their goal difference deficit against Manchester City, and now it's now +4 after the 6-0 win over Leeds last night. Mo Salah's brought it to 19 goals for the Premier League season with 2 penalties. Sadio Mane with 2 goals last night as well. He's got to 11. Diota, who's injured, has got 12 goals this season as well for Liverpool. So they're really motoring now. They're really in a groove, and the Man City game in early April will be absolutely fascinating. Watford, I think, are going down with Norwich. We have Watford losing 4-1 to Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson's former club. But I'm just looking at the bottom here. I'm just looking at Brentford playing 26 games and 24 points. Leeds with 25 games played, 23. Everton with 23 games played, 22. Newcastle with 24 games played, 22 points. And Burnley now right back in the hunt to stay up. 23 games played, 20 points after a 1-0 win over Spurs. They were up for it, as they are at Turf Moor, in the rain, Ben Mee with the goal, and Antonio Conte, here is the quote: "I came here to help the club, and if the problem could be the coach, I'm ready to go, no problem." And let's hear more now from the Italian.
When you lose 4 games in the last five games, it means that you have to make assessment. The club has to make assessment, also to speak together and to understand which is the best solution. The players are always the same. In this club, change the coaches, but the players are the same. But the result doesn't change. And I repeat, I'm too honest to accept this type of situation, and for sure we'll make assessment with the club. The reality that we lost 4 games in the last 5 games, and with this situation, and we have to fight for the relegation zone if we continue this way. And I repeat, it will be important for everybody to understand very well the situation, because for sure you have to make assessment of the club first of all, and I repeat, I'm ever available and to the club for every decision, and because I repeat, I come here to help the club, and but in this moment it's very difficult because I'm not helping the club.
That's more resigned than the previous clip we played. That's more, I'm ready for any decision the club wants to make. I'm open to that.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, folks, which is about lads trying to sell real estate, and they're struggling, a lot of them, but Al Pacino is the only one who isn't struggling, and he's just given these leads, which is kind of like leads to sell a property by his manager, and he just goes, Patel, you're giving me these leads? These leads are awful. And effectively it's like Antonio Conte saying, I can't work with what I have here. He was able to do it against Manchester City, but is he able to work with the raw materials he has at Spurs? Because it's almost like he just feels, I'm ready to walk out of this situation here. And maybe he hasn't gelled with the ownership and the leaders of the club, but it's amazing that a guy who's won 3 league titles at Juventus, a league title with Chelsea, a league title only last season with Inter Milan, feels that he just wants a jacket in. And now he's an emotional guy. We can see that on the touchline. Maybe in a few days he'll have calmed down and have a different view. But it's a pretty stark situation for a guy who came into the club in November to be in already. What promises have been made around the summer? We know the comments that he made to Sky Italia about the transfer dealings in the window, like the 2 players that were signed already in the team. So it is, once again, it's illustrative of the fact that he feels like the raw materials outside of Son and Kane are just not good enough. And when you get the backing in the summer, because to me, Spurs have not been a club to back managers in the last few years. And my opinion on the whole thing, I probably said it in OTB AM before, is the club needs to be sold now. They're great business people, Enoch, Daniel Levy, Joe Lewis, the ultimate owner of the club, but they've won 1 trophy in 20 years. They're great business people. The stadium is fantastic. They can host NFL games. They can host Champions Cup finals. They've got a great training ground, all that kind of thing. But ultimately, the currency which you're judged, as well as you can do in the league under Pochettino, who was the guy who made them punch above their weight with the wage structure they had, and they reached a Champions League final, and that's all well and good now. But they've regressed seriously since then. If Jose, even though Jose was on the wane, if Antonio Conte, who is a hot, fresh manager at the elite level, can't fix Spurs, then it's not Conte's fault. It's either the players' fault, and then there's a recruitment issue on the top of that, and then it's ultimately the owners' fault. The owners have not delivered football results over 20 years. Chelsea have won 18 major trophies since Abramovich took over in 2003 in that period, and Arsenal have won 9.
But the Arsenal comparison, I think, is fairer probably than the Chelsea one, given the amount of money that Chelsea pumped in at the start. But Chelsea did turn the business into a farm where loads of the best young footballers in Europe are connected to Chelsea, and they're going to be sustainable into the future without massive investment. Spurs' net spend is quite high over recent seasons. It's just that their recruitment has been atrocious.
Absolutely. And if you look at the Amazon documentary, I don't know if anybody saw the Spurs Amazon documentary, it looks absolutely pathetic now. It just looks pathetic. It looks like a club trying to portray themselves as this world brand, and it just isn't there. And I do think the chairman is a great businessman, but I do think he's been too involved in the whole intrigue around negotiations and the transfer deadline day and all that kind of thing. And I don't see enough football expertise, Michael Edwards style, or anybody who's at City in the dealings. And you talk about Chelsea there. Gallagher's at Palace, Broya at Southampton, Livramento I think was on the books at Chelsea as well. As you say, all of these top players that could come back now, and what would they be adding to Chelsea under Tuchel? Where like you talked about Atletico Madrid last night, Saul Niguez hasn't even got a look at Chelsea. So Tottenham, as I said, how many players would you want to go to war with in a title rush for Spurs, a club that had 86 points in 2017, possibly only Kane and Son?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, John. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think we have to delve too deep into what, almost a little bit cryptic there in terms of what Conte is saying. I think you're right. I think it's a lot more simple than that. And he referenced Nuno there, didn't he? And say, look, it was the same situation with the last manager. Same results. They've changed manager, i.e. me, same results. So that's pretty clear in terms of what he's saying. I think it's pretty obvious he's saying this squad isn't good enough. He's alluded to that before, John, initially when he came in, didn't he? He kind of tempered expectations, didn't he? And said, you can't expect this team to be compete top 6A. We are where we are. So he was even throwing those soundboards out early on in terms of we're a mid-table team. This is what we are. People have got to accept it. And basically saying unless that significant investment comes into the football club, you've got to spend it wisely. I think Jay's right. I think money has been squandered there in terms of money that's been spent over the past 2 or 3 years in terms of the quality of players who've come in. But I think Conte literally is just saying there's got to be you've got to give me significant amounts of money here if you're going to be realistic in terms of making the jump forward that we all want. And if you're not, I'm off.
Okay,
I'm not your man.
Is he looking at the Man United job thinking that would be a better job and I could just leave here and get that one in the summer? Is there a possibility that Conte is thinking that?
Why would Man United give him the job now?
Because he's still you used the phrase elite manager. He's still an elite manager. He won a league title last season. He has won a league title in this jurisdiction that they're thinking, and you're like, obviously it's not our jurisdiction. Before I get all the little bots, do you know what I mean? Like he is a manager who will come in and make sure that no one is slacking at Manchester United, and he will get rid of the dead wood really quickly. There'll be a not particularly interesting style of play, but it'll be successful. He'd be an excellent Man United manager.
I agree with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And he should get the job. But is Richard Arnold, who's very close to Woodward, actually going to do that? And there seems to be a lot of this thinking at United about the youth, and we're going to bring young players on. And I don't think United are equipped for the ruthlessness of Conte.
Yeah, I agree with you as well, John. I don't think they'll grab him. He was there. He was on a plate, served up in a plate, wasn't he, 6 months ago? And they said, no, thank you. I don't think that's going to change now in the summer.
They get Solskjaer a new contract.
Yeah, but I think for me it's like personality and all those type of things must play a significant part. I don't understand why. For me, you got to push those things aside as a director of football or wherever you are in terms of, do you know what, I don't like the rub of this fella. He actually rubs me up. Well, forget about that. Think about his impact in the dressing room. He's going to rub the players up. What reaction he's going to get off the players? That's what matters. How's he going to set up the team?
Yeah.
So that's what's got to drive your decision in terms of the new manager. But I don't think it will in United's case, and that's why I think the likes of Pochettino, if it's Ten Hag or whoever it is, they're the managers who are in prime position at the moment for that reason in terms of profile job, how they project themselves, how it's perceived. They manage the modern day players and young players in particular.
That's the coffee machine in the background. Go on.
Yeah, I don't even drink it. Pulp Fiction style. It's amazing how things can change in a week. Like on Saturday night, even I was doing videos, which is normally not normally something I would do, like screaming into a camera. To Harry Kane now being worth 150 million quid again, to us building a great new future, to waking up on a Thursday morning after losing to Burnley and it's all despair again. It's maybe not something that's going to be great for my mental health, to be honest.
Football, bloody hell.
But that's replicated every year, isn't it? Burnley you've spoken about there, John, in terms of going back to back 3 in the spin now, and all of a sudden it's like the whole landscapes change. Newcastle was to a certain extent as well. Brentford and Leeds you're looking at, it's spiralling down. And the last weekend was a funny weekend for me. It was almost like everything was all happening. The stars were aligned. Every game had some importance attached to it. Something was happening in every single game. It was significant. The goals that were going in, the results, top end, Bart Men, Champions League, the whole shebang. It's that's what it does to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got good again.
Without question. Like we're kind of having the chat at the top as well. Sorry, John's got to go. But we're at the top about how brilliant this whole thing looks, and I guess Liverpool and dismantling Leeds United last night. If we're getting excited about the Premier League, just is exactly what you want to see with this title race.
Premier League is where it's at, folks. It's absolutely where it's at.
You're dead right though about Daniel Levy, right? That there are very few celebrity chief executives of football clubs in the Premier League. There are very few people who have as much fame as he has at his club.
Oh, that's a stretch, Jay. I don't agree with that.
Who's in charge at Arsenal? Who's in charge at Chelsea?
Edu.
What?
Just won the Super Bowl.
Edu.
Who?
Well, you're talking about Daniel Levy as a
the Cronkies.
Yeah,
but the Cronkies are no one knows about. Who's in charge at Liverpool really?
I think the difference, John. I'm going to ask John at Sport. I don't get a sense of Levy. This is like a massive ego thing. He wants to be up front and centre. It's all about him. He wants to make himself the story. I think he wants his hands on. He wants to be hands on in terms of every penny that goes in and out of that football club, and he wants to get value for money and the best deal every single time a player comes in and out, John. But I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a massive ego thing that's kind of driving it. It's all about him. Would you?
Well, if you watch the Amazon documentary, you might have a different view on that.
Oh, really? I'm saying
because he's all over the Amazon documentary. Why is he all over the Amazon documentary?
Because he wants to be a celebrity. That's
so to me, the whole Daniel Levy reputation's been about him driving a hard bargain and Ferguson requiring the root canal and Berbatov transfer and all that kind of thing. And that's all goes. That's all well and good. And you know, we're doing things really, really efficiently. How many trophies have you won in 20 years? One. Are you going to go for another 20 years of this? No.
I think, John, I don't think that's fair either, to be honest with you. I think that's too easy. In terms of, you haven't won a trophy in 20 years, you have to kind of, you have to factor in terms of what the managers during that period of time, what they've had to work with, in terms of what they've been working against during that period of time. Are you genuinely saying during that period Tottenham should have won 2 league championships? Or they should have won Champions League. Or
Leicester won
you can
more.
Talk about domestic competitions. Yeah, you can rock up, you can nick a cup here and there. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think you can say Tottenham over the last 20 years. You know, they should have been league champions on 3 or 4 occasions. They've massively underachieved. You got to be. I don't think that's fair, John. You can only get the best out of what you have available. You only get the best out of what you have available to you.
Well, I think winning cups, even if it's FA Cups, does breed a degree of confidence and a few future forward looking within a team, because I think the whole thing about Tottenham, Kenny, over the years is that people have seen them as being soft, and last night's another example of that.
Yeah,
and that's why they haven't been consistently able to deliver. So if you're actually winning trophies, you're winning an FA Cup or 2, you can feel there's a momentum there. And
I think they had it, John, didn't they? They had it for a period under Pochettino. That was gone.
Yeah,
that kind of soft
squandering of that.
That was the time. I agree with you actually totally then. There was a period of time, and Pochettino was saying it, wasn't he, to be fair to him, and a couple of people were scratching their heads. What's he talking about? They're flying. They're in the top of the Champions League. He's been a bit downcast, and he's talking about you need this thing's got to change. Yeah. We have to build on this, and people are going a bit over the top. There was a little bit of that, John, wasn't there? Oh, he's gone a little bit over the top here. They've been in a great position, but he was right ultimately, wasn't he, in terms of that's when Levy needed to show a little bit of imagination and really back him, and that was the point where they needed to floor it.
Now, well, there was a time when they beat Liverpool 4-1 at Wembley. They hammered Liverpool, and there was the case that Spurs were here and Liverpool were here, and then they moved up almost in the opposite direction with each other, because Spurs didn't sign a player for 18 months. Only player this time was Lucas Moura. To be fair, they had to build a stadium, and there was a sunk cost to that. But Joe Lewis is worth 4 to 5 billion, and like ultimately, what is the point in owning a football club to a degree? And like we're all, I suppose, sometimes blind, and we can always turn a blind eye to look. We just spent 300 or 400 million more than you just to get our trophies. But what is the point in owning it ultimately?
Okay, it's a brilliant philosophical question to finish this one. More from John on Saturday afternoon.
All right, folks.
On Off the Ball on Newstalk, and of course you can read Virtual Insanity at otbsports.com.
I need to watch that Spurs thing. It's not my. I just can't.
I can't get into
the enthusiasm. I can't get the enthusiasm.
The Spurs one was, you'd laugh at it. Like, I mean, it was.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to watch it.
I thought it was good, but if I was a Spurs fan, I probably wouldn't think it was good. Put it that way.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, but your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Bobby Dwyer, Spurs fan, horrendous from Spurs over the past few weeks, but Conte's going nowhere. He knows where his popularity is in comparison to the board and trying to force their hand. Flying Hellfish 99 says, I live for JD's movie references sailing over Owen's head.
This morning I was on top of them, but I don't live for that by and large. But today was good. Today was a good day for me, I think.
You know what Pulp Fiction is, do you?
And I've also seen Glengarry, Glen Ross. So I've seen both of those movies, both of those niche hip movies that definitely aren't very famous or anything like that.
And you know Glengarry, Glen Ross is actually a play, right?
Yes, I do know it's a play, Dad.
Good. Philip Nolan says Blanc at Man United was still better than Maguire. Ooh, I'm not sure. Exactly, Jerry Maguire has lost a yard of pace. He was painfully slow anyway. It's now hitting his confidence. Philip Nolan again says Blanc could be a shout for the new manager. I don't think so. I think Blanc blotted his copybook with some racial profiling that is not going to go away. And Saragon McKenney says Conte sounded almost tearful. Man United need new owners, not Spurs, who have some football people involved. United ain't getting Conte. Ten Hag is next at Old Trafford.
I think it's an element of risk there with Ten Hag. I've got to be honest with you. I think it's an easy one. It's a good Ajax team he's put together there. They're playing some good football. They would tick a lot of boxes in that respect. But that's a big, massive jump, isn't it? It's a massive jump from there to Manchester United for the reasons that we're talking about. Yeah, players, personalities.
It's the same jump that Man United or that Liverpool made when they hired from Dortmund. It was a league winner in a different league. Although Dortmund's achievement in winning that league versus Bayern Munich is bigger than the achievement of obviously winning for Ajax. But turning Ajax into a Champions League quarterfinalist, semi-finalist over the last couple of years, that should be getting him a big job in world football.
No, I can understand why he's mentioned, but still for me. For me, it's still kind of Pochettino. For me, it's head and shoulders above him. If that's the decision, it's going to come down to that particular decision. He's won nothing. I can hear it all. He's won nothing. He's won a
French Cup now, and he's going to win the league this season.
And now suddenly that's changed him. Now suddenly, but that's my whole point, isn't it? Now suddenly it'll be like because he's won a league, with PSG. Yeah. Is he a far better manager now than he was like 4 months ago? I don't think so. It's the same manager, isn't he?
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. You got to take that for me with a pinch of salt. His body at work at Spurs during that period of time, for me, that's what's going to get him the job.
Yeah, all right.
Manchester United.
Okay, let's move on. 8:55 this morning. This is exciting. Last night, the very first episode of the Hurling Pod dropped. Former Galway goalkeeper James Skehill and Kilkenny's 4-time All-Ireland winning cornerback Paul Murphy will be joining Will O'Callaghan every week to talk hurling. The lads weren't holding back in their first episode, putting a left field choice top of hurling's power rankings.
I've taken a completely different approach. I'm just going present time right now, what I see in front of me since the start of the league, right? And my rankings, I have
Galway first.
No, I have Wexford first. Right? And we can debate that. I think right, we can debate that. I have to be kind of sort of tactical here as well. I have Wexford first, a good steam build up, right? I have Cork second. I have Tipperary third, Galway fourth, Waterford fifth. So that's what it's much in the line of the minute, right? That's present tense. Now I come back to you next week. That could all change again. You know what I mean? So I understand the rankings. You can be kind of sidetracked with how impressive Limerick were last year in the championship. Of course you are. New year, let's just go afresh. So I'm thinking, and give merits to the people in the teams for the results they produce in today. So Paul, go on, rip it there, Paul. What are you going to do?
I suppose you can look at it and we're approaching it from different angles. I suppose I'm trying to find somewhere in the middle. Like we're talking power rankings. We're talking who's most likely the most powerful teams that are going to have an influence on the year as a whole. You have to take last year into consideration. Again, we're looking at this year. Like for me, Limerick stay on top. Like again, if you want to go on form, yeah, grand. But that's what the league table is there for, to tell you who's on form. If we're talking overall, who I think is in control of this year, I would be saying Limerick at the moment. I think Waterford myself at the moment are most likely. I mean, Cork didn't lay a hand on them in the All-Ireland final. I suppose it'd be easy to go with Cork, but who gave them the hardest game? You have to go with Waterford. And again, Waterford hurling without the Ballygunner lads are putting in savage performances. Ballygunner lads come back in absolutely flying form. I think Lonnie Bolstrom. This thing is tricky enough then, so like that'd be 1 and 2 for me. I think for the next 3, it is quite tricky then. I suppose Cork people won't like me that I'm sliding them right down, but I'd actually go a Galway, Wexford 3 and 4 again, just because of the results they've had, and that is more so on the moment of what we're seeing at the moment. But based on Galway had a bad year last year, and some people might criticise me that I have Limerick on top, but Galway had a bad year last year. But again, just what I'm seeing with Galway, with the St. Thomas's lads as well, who would a last gasp goal against TJ, otherwise they would have been in an All-Ireland final. Likes of Fintan Burke coming back and just hurling absolutely remarkably. from what I'm seeing from Galway and the big scores, I'm putting Galway 3. I'll be putting Wexford in 4, in fairness to them. Like, 2 big results there. Again, like we said, they look even like rejuvenated. They didn't look like they were out on their feet last year, but they look rejuvenated again under Darragh Egan. And then look, I think after that, I might just not that I'll let Cork slip into 5th, but look, again, they had one match against Clare where, in fairness, they racked up a huge score, a bit of a dead rubber against Offaly that you couldn't tell a whole lot from. So I suppose for me anyway, once you get down to 5th, 6th, 7th, it kind of gets a little bit blurred there. But look, like I said, I think it's Limerick, Waterford, Galway, Wexford at the moment for me.
All right, Will Callan is with us. Will, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Great. It won't be midweek for most weeks. We just wanted to get a kind of a taking stock of the league so far and look at the first couple of round of fixtures, get that out midweek this week. It's going to be Monday evenings for the audio pod and then kind of Tuesday lunchtime for the video pod, which means that you'll have a chance to listen to the hurling on Monday before the football pod comes around on Tuesday.
Look,
so
you got to get in there first.
Rivalry,
there you
but
go.
It means you got a chance to get your hurling analysis first.
There you go. They've set the bar pretty high, but you guys are going to clear it. No problems. Come here. So I like James Skell's. That's the power rankings today. If we're playing an All-Ireland final today, that's my power rankings. I like that, as opposed to Owen with his made-up criteria where one week it's one thing and another week it's like, I'm going back to 1984 when I remember Mikey Sheehy's fisted goal against Tyrone, and that was 85, was it? Whatever.
I don't know. I wouldn't trust you to get anything correct anyway, because, I mean, people who watch this show every day know that you talk an absolute load of nonsense, and know that you will have come at me this week over overreacting to Donegal's bad results, their most recent results, their current form.
The game you're at.
Overreacting
to
literally last weekend.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that.
Well, I was saying what? What's your argument? Come on.
Well, who are you? You've had the Dubs number 1 for like forever until they lost.
Until now, which is current form. Yeah, they were number 1 when they were good at that current time.
Well, who are your rankings? What are your official rankings?
Well, look, you heard Skehill say there, before we give him too much credit on going with an absolute hot take on what's happened on the first 2 weeks, that he was tactically picking. Like, his number 1 pick, Wexford, who are they playing this weekend? They go to play Galway. He's putting all the pressure onto Wexford after 2 good results before they go to Salt Hill. So he can turn around next week. I've no doubt if Galway win on Sunday, where Skehill can go, well, Galway have just beaten the number 1 ranked team, so Galway have to go to the very top. So Galway were a jumper. I'll work my way through the from 24 down.
Did you have Galway 12th? Was that where they started?
No. They started off in 9th pre-season.
9th?
And yeah, spoilers, they're going up a bit now at this stage. I did enjoy, though, Ger, that 2 people tweeted me pretty much on the full-time whistle between Limerick and Galway at the Gaelic grounds last Saturday week. That just goes to show what matters. It's not your team beating Limerick on the day. It's a chance to stick it to the person who put your team down in the power rankings at the start.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
They're going up the table. We'll get to that in a second. So here we go from 24. So Sligo have had a pretty disappointing start in Division 2B. They've lost their first 2 games, so they're down to 24th. London are a new entry, but they get green on the rankings because they've got a win against Mayo last time out. They've got a win and a draw so far. Mayo just above them in 22nd place. They've got just 1 point from their first 2 games, but I still think that they're a little bit better than London, even though they lost that fixture just before the break came around. Donegal, who are currently joint top in Division 2A or Division 2B, have started the season really well. 2 wins from 2, and they have to, as a result of that, bump up to 21st place and 23rd. Wicklow have had just a win and a draw so far this season, but I'm keeping them in 20th position, which brings us around to 19th then, which is Kildare, who are going to be boosted by their Naas players coming back in after their All-Ireland Club Intermediate success, so they should improve, but they've lost their first 2 matches in a Division 2A that looks incredibly difficult to call after the results last week. More about that none when we talk about Carlow. Meath beat Kildare on the opening weekend. They've got a huge game this coming Sunday in Trim against their neighbours Westmeath, where they could derail Westmeath's chances of going back up to Division 1, but Meath stay in 18th position. Then I'm looking at Down and Carlow are going to swap places here. Carlow got a huge victory last time out. They had a poor start against Down, but they beat Westmeath, which has blown the second flight wide open. It's very difficult to see who's going to come out of Division 2A after that victory for Carlow, and they've given themselves a chance now to finish in the top 2. We then get into the top 14 here. I'm unchanged for the next 3 entries. Kerry, who lost to Westmeath in the first round but bounced back with a victory last time out, stay in 14th. Offaly have lost their first 2 games since going up to Division 1A and were very heavily beaten by Cork. The game was over after 15 minutes when they conceded 3 goals last time out, but they stayed just above the 2A teams in 13th place. Westmeath, disappointing result against Carlow, but they're in 12th position. The team on the slide in 11th are Laois, and that's because of the nature of the defeats that have taken place, particularly in the last round of games. So Laois conceded 7 goals against Waterford, and like if you're conceding over 50 scores within a game, albeit against a Waterford team who can open up against most teams, really disappointing for Cheddar Plunkett's side from a defensive point of view. And we'll see how they get on against the Kilkenny team, who could be welcoming back the 2 last young hurlers of the year for the game at Nolan Park this weekend. Antrim were beaten by Dublin in Corrigan Park, but again have shown that's going to be an incredibly difficult place to go. They got 2 wins there last year, ran teams close in the other games that they didn't win in Corrigan Park over the last few years. And you go to Belfast, you're going to get a game. Dublin came out with the victory, but Antrim ran them all the way. So given the way that Antrim played against Kilkenny and played against Dublin, I've bumped them up ahead of Laois into 10th position. The fallers then, in 9th place, you've got Clare falling down after 2 defeats, lost out to Wexford. Clare supporters will point out to me they've lost to Wexford in the league a few times recently and then beat them in Championship. So maybe they'll feel if they meet later this year, they'll be in a better place. We spoke about Colm Galvin's retirement. Tony Kelly, the good news, there were pictures of him taking part in the warm-up ahead of that Wexford game, so it can't be too long before their key player comes back in. But for now, Clare dropped down to 9th place, and that's largely due to the bump we're going to see from Galway in a moment. I put Kilkenny into 8th. There's not a huge amount between this middle bracket, as we've discussed a few times. Kilkenny lost out in a game that was level, I think, on 8 different occasions against the rivals Tipperary last time out. TJ Reid is on his honeymoon, so he's not going to be back for a few weeks. They're going to have to deal without him probably until the next break. But they will be getting Adrian Mullen and Owen Cody coming back into their team, which should boost them. And they've got a fixture this weekend, which they should win against Laois. But for now, Kilkenny are in 8th place. Couldn't drop Wexford after winning 2 games in a row. Impressive start, having beaten Limerick, backing that up by going to Ennis just before the break and beating Clare. We keep Dublin in 6th position. Again, their draw against Waterford in week 1 edged out the game against Antrim last time out. Tipperary have won their first 2 games, maybe not all that impressively. We spoke about it in the hurling pod. They're definitely moving towards a more possession-based hurling game than probably what they played in 2019. Still, they have to work out 2 big absences with the Mars retirements over the off-season, but Tipperary getting the job done last time out against Kilkenny. The big movers, Galway, no great surprise here. I think after the game against Limerick, lads, they showed that they are a team who have got everything that can actually beat Limerick this summer. Yeah, again, they've shown that they're a bad matchup for Limerick.
Where were they last week?
So they were in, I think, 8th position last week. So they've jumped up 4 places. And I think totally
Why are Cork second here? Cork got annihilated in the All-Ireland final last year. Have shown nothing since, really, because they haven't had the opportunity to, but they got annihilated. They're not the second best team in the country. Galway are now...
You're going to find out exactly where Cork are this weekend, Ger, when they go and play Limerick in a repeat of the All-Ireland final. And I agree with you, and Paul Murphy said it within the clip that we played a few minutes ago as well. Cork didn't lay a glove on Limerick last year in the meetings between the 2 sides. Cork are possibly have got an argument for saying that they're the best of the rest based on what they've done over the last year and a bit. But until they actually go out and do what Wexford or Galway have done to Limerick, they could well be on the slide, I think, when we do the hurling rankings next week. So this is a big test for them this weekend.
I think they've been grandfathered in on reputation rather than anything else.
Possibly. But look, you can't take away from their first 2 fixtures either. Like, they ran up a huge scoreline against Clare at Porky Queeve in the first game, and I kind of almost write off the Offaly result given that they opened up in that fixture. But again, they won their 2 games, and so as a result, I wasn't going to drop them because of that. I think this is a good...
That's why these power rankings are hard. You've got to drop teams who are winning sometimes.
Yeah, you do. And look, some teams who've won have gone down a place or who've sat stagnant despite the fact that they picked up 2 victories. But I wasn't going to put Galway directly into number 2, which was, look, it was a temptation after the game against Limerick because they hurled so well, particularly in that final quarter. You can't but be impressed with going into the home of the All-Ireland champions, even if you take the different caveats that are there. Garrod Hegarty being sent off, the fact that Keane Lynch wasn't available for Limerick, that Limerick appeared to have started a little bit slowly in their first 2 games. And at the same time, give Galway all the credit. And this is why I really hope that they meet this summer in the championship. It's not nailed on because of the way the provincial system is set up this year, but I would love to see an All-Ireland semi-final or final between Galway and Limerick, see them go toe-to-toe, and let's see how this Galway team develops as the year goes on.
Okay. I do also buy Paul Murphy's point about Waterford putting it up to Limerick more than anybody else last year, although that first half Tipperary. So I do think that Cork are behind Tip and Cork are behind Waterford and Cork are behind Galway. So I'd have Cork 5th at this stage, at best.
Well, they could well be fifth next week if they take a hammering against Limerick this weekend. But we'll see. Again, that's the real litmus test about where they are. I think Waterford lads, they're going to benefit massively from the Ballygunner players that come back in on the back of a first ever All-Ireland club success for a Waterford team. It's going to add a little bit of extra firepower to them as well. And I would agree. I think there's a very good chance that Waterford are going to be towards the top of these power rankings when we discuss them next week. I didn't take the temptation that Skell had to just bump Limerick right down. I think Limerick will have no concern after not winning their first 3 games last year.
No, they won't. But at the same time, it's a snapshot of where we are right now. Isn't that right, Owen?
Absolutely. The current is all that matters.
Well, good stuff. Congratulations on the Hurling Pod. And it'll drop next Monday evening, so make sure you are subscribed to the OTB GA feed for that. You can also subscribe to the Hurling Pod feed itself to make sure that you don't miss it, and turn on automatic downloads, and it'll all be seamless for you. It is 8 minutes past 9. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Joe Malloy meeting Gerlach Nan. Leaders' Questions with Stuart Lancaster at 3. Our retro panel is When GA Meets Basketball at 4. And OTB Gold is the story of Wexford's 1956 team with 2 teammates from that, Art Foley and Ned Wheeler, at 7 o'clock tonight. The show is live with Nathan and John Giles, and plenty of reaction to everything that's going on, including live updates on a relatively interesting night of Europa League action. Napoli and Barcelona very delicately poised at the moment. Filmmaker Miguel Flatow joins us in studio next on OTB AM to talk about his award-winning movie Va por Diego, and we're bringing you the full chat with Andy Dunne at 9:30. But first, here he is talking about Joey Carberry's potential.
What has been so interesting about the Carberry discussion around that night is that I have heard the full spectrum of 8 out of 10 man of the match, right back to an indication as to why we really do need Sexton for the World Cup. So you can give us a number 10's view.
I'd probably lie, I'll sit on the fence on this one. I would lie somewhere in the middle. I think kind of above average. I certainly don't think he was an 8 out of 10. I think he can play better, and I don't think he was central actually to the result either. He plays kicked very well. He's kicking out of hand reasonably well. He has variation in his game. He had a lovely little moment of kind of elusive footwork about 5 minutes into the game where he could have got collared, and he just showed what he's got in terms of capability there. And overall, the game management, when I watched it live, I think I was guilty of the same thing we just spoke about, the immediate comparison to what would Sexton be doing, what would we be doing in this situation were Sexton there. And I think we have to look at it through a different lens. I think, having watched it back, I thought he had a pretty composed game. I don't think he'd any particular howlers. I think the team worked well around him, and in reality the result was determined by a number of small incidents that had nothing to do with them, really.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Six Nations on OTB.
Can you come on and talk about Ireland's attack shape? It's really exciting. I don't remember if we getting that goal 15 years ago.
It's spinning! It's spinning! Gone on it!
I've never seen a team like Ireland before.
Excuse me, that's a bit offensive to us because we're Welsh. You could just keep your own opinion to yourself.
The Six Nations on OTB. Don't miss a moment of the action. Subscribe to the OTB Rugby podcast feed now.
What will Sarsfields have learned from the final a couple of months ago then that they can maybe implement against Oulart this time round? Because to my untrained eye at least, Oulart took control of that game in the second half and were very, very impressive. What do Sarsfields have to do differently at Croke Park if we're going to have a different result this time round?
Look, it's the bear on the square, isn't it? Una Lacey scored 3 goals the last day. It looked like she was left isolated, and you know, I think there was a bit of naivety there. I'm not for playing a sweeper, but certainly the defence, the Sarsfields defence, can't allow her isolated on the square on her own. I don't know who's going to pick up Una in the end. They're probably all having nightmares about the possibility of it. But from the point of view of Sarsfields, I think Copper McGrath has to look at that and try and stop Una from getting the ball. You know, 3 goals, that was the difference in the final the last time.
Yeah, and ultimately it might be about trying to cut down the supply which is coming into her as well. Because
I don't actually think that's possible because of the likes of Inez Curran, Stacey Keogh, Shelley Keogh, Ursula. Yeah. They are absolutely flying it. But the end product was obviously Una being able to put away those scores. So shutting off Una. Does that help?
And that's the thing, Will, just on that, that Sarsfields would have done that a little bit in Nolan Park. It's their game plan. They do have a sitting extra defender, and they still weren't able to eliminate Una Lacey in that situation.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 13 minutes past 9. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. In the break there, you'll have heard a clip from the Club Championship show as Will O'Callaghan, Killian Whelan and Sarah O'Donovan previewed the Camogie this weekend. Our Club Championship coverage on Off the Ball is brought to you by AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. You can check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more, and you'll find that podcast as well as the rest of our GAA coverage in the OTB GAA podcast feed. Now, this evening, around about 6 o'clock in the Lighthouse Cinema at the Dublin International Film Festival, a movie called Va por Diego will screen, and I'm delighted to say Miguel Flatow, the director, is with us in studio this morning. Good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hi, Ger. Nice to see you, man.
Welcome,
Thanks for the invite.
Welcome to Dublin. How important is it when you bring a movie to a film festival? Like, what's that experience actually like for you? Because it's your life's work for the last couple of years, and then you're in a room and you're watching the screen and watching the audience to see, are they laughing at the right bits? Are they crying at the right bits?
I'm still fairly new at this, so this is like my second festival. We debuted at the Morelia Film Festival, which is kind of like the biggest one in Latin America, probably. So that was quite the experience. So still kind of getting used to it and the whole experience, but it matters a lot because you get a lot of free press. Sometimes, like the front end of the festivals are like the red carpet, and the pictures in the back end are like film markets. So sometimes depends on the festival. This is a smaller festival, I guess, but for the bigger festivals like Toronto Con, there's all, like Netflix and Sony and Amazon and all these distributors will come
buy your movie.
Will come and buy all the independent movies.
Right.
And yeah, there's different components to that. But
so, what is your hope for this film? How do you make sure that as many people see it as possible? What
exactly. Happens? Well, one of them is like being here on the next few figures, like the canning. So all of the press helps really, because now we're in the process of distribution, sales. So we have a sales agency called Field Content. I think it's like a Spanish agency, and so we're just trying to build up as much support and publicity for the film, so that the sales and the distribution is an easier process.
Okay. So that all makes sense. The movie is it's a football movie, but it's obviously not a football movie, but it is a football movie.
Yeah.
So why make a sports film?
I mean, I played a lot of soccer back in my day. I played semi-pro. I almost got to the pro level, but then I injured my knee ligament. So a little bit like the character in the film. And then when I was, then I went to the United States to study and everything. But while I was there, I kept thinking, like, what happened to all my friends? I don't know how it works here, but when you're in Mexico, you kind of basically have to drop out of school to pursue the dream, because you start training during the day and during the night. And so you really have to sacrifice everything. And the odds of you really making it are like, I don't know, 1 in a million. So I kept thinking, like, what happened to all my friends that didn't make it, clearly, because I didn't hear about any of them. And which is really the lives of thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of Mexicans. And I'm sure, like, just the case of many players around the world. So the idea was just really exploring those lives after you don't achieve the dream, which is most likely.
I think that's particularly apt from an Irish context, because that's conversations being had for quite some time over the years. Young Irish players, 15, 16, being poached traditionally by the bigger clubs in England, dropping their education, which would have been the case 15, 16, and just, chasing the dream in England. And like you suggested, the percentage of people who succeed in that environment is very small. And the ones who do succeed get all the headlines, the contracts, profile, and we all, we know about them. We should kind of share their experiences. They travel through football, but the ones that don't, we don't hear their stories. Maybe last few years we've heard a little bit more. They've got a little bit more exposure. The players who didn't meet it and came back to Dublin, to Ireland, had a very difficult time. And Miguel really kind of struggled.
Yeah.
Fell out of love with football, became angry, disillusioned, and that affected all aspects of their kind of life, how they live kind of going forward after that.
Brilliant. Yeah.
You said that you had an injury that was similar to the character in the film. Are you drawing a lot from your own experiences when you write this thing?
I mean, you kind of, when you write anything, I guess inevitably it just kind of slips into it. I tried not to, but yeah, I think it is a fictional story, but inevitably you just kind of, filter a little bit of the elements that will make the protagonist more real. But I wouldn't say it's based on me. Yeah.
What sort of experiences did you draw on them when you were writing it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely played with a lot of the guys, even some of, like, my intention was that I wanted to show soccer how, like, the way it hasn't been filmed before. For me, when I see soccer films, and it was a big question I asked, like, why aren't there that many good soccer films? And I realized it's because it's a very difficult sport to film.
Yeah.
Especially the classical 11 versus 11, because it's kind of slow. The scores are 1-0, 2-1, too many players to develop individually. So what I realized is
Nothing wrong with 0-0. That's the fourth thing we're going to fall out over.
So what I realized is reducing it to like 7v7 aside, and then it turns a lot more dynamic. The scores are higher. You can develop each character individually, and that's kind of like filming basketball or hockey, of which there's many good films. So I think that was kind of my insight, and with that in mind, I really wanted to cast soccer players first and turn them into actors, as opposed to do the opposite, which is, I think, probably harder to teach an actor to play soccer at the level that I wanted to show it.
Right.
So I wanted to film with like a wider lens, longer shots, and you can tell, like, just not that edited. I wanted to show that the players could actually play.
Yeah.
So I think if you like soccer and you see the film, you'll probably be like, oh, I've never seen soccer filmed that way.
Exactly. We actually had that conversation outside this morning, that it's one of the most striking parts of it is that the actual sport in it is really accurate, and like it seems like a pretty straightforward thing to say, but as you know yourself, I mean, getting football right on the screen is really tough.
It's not that easy.
So did you consider going 11 aside on this when you were writing it, or were you thinking to yourself a smaller scale thing would be much easier to be authentic?
Yeah, I was doing when I was doing some prep, I was like, oh, filming 11 is basically impossible, so I kind of modified the script to be and immediately everything just turned easier. You have to cast less people. Just lowers their costs, and yeah, just the visual aspect just immediately made a lot more sense. So that was, I feel like, an insight, because I don't think there's that many films with like five aside or 7 aside, and it just makes a lot more sense visually.
Can footballers act? Was that your general finding?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, isn't it?
Badly, generally.
Hang on.
I don't know.
It's built into football. It's like, oh, I'm really badly injured. So.
Some say they have a life practice for it, Yeah. No, that was one of the challenges, because I definitely got like real soccer players that some of them even played at a pro level, were now retired, or some that were very close. Like everybody at least played sufficiently well enough. And then yeah, we got them through like an intensive, drama acting workshop, all of them, and it was a process. But I think I'm pretty happy with the end result. Yeah.
Should have had my CV in.
Should have sent it.
Slip through the net.
Yeah.
So when you're actually filming the 7-a-side scenes, can you talk us through like the technical aspects of it? Because I guess the actual behind the scenes element of all this is really interesting as well.
Yeah, well, I don't think if you see the film, you realize that the whole thing was shot on an iPhone 11. Back then, it was the most modern iPhone. And that's, yeah, I guess like the phones are so advanced. Maybe not that one. That seems a little bit shabby. But yeah,
preaching to the converted.
But definitely for the soccer, it made a lot of sense. It facilitated a lot of the shots that wouldn't be otherwise possible, because like the DP was literally in the field just running after the players, running at top speed, and we did use like an additional stabilizer. Like the iPhone already stabilizes pretty well internally.
It's a gimbal, a handheld. So.
Yeah, it has a gimbal. I think it was like a movie, I think, and like the DP is just running straight ahead. Full speed, and it just looks clean.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so that helped a lot as well.
Is there instructions for what should happen on the field of play, or do you just kind of let it play out? And
yeah, we did like a mixture. Like at some point, we did get like for the games, I would go to one team and be like, oh, this guy said something about you. So just trying to rile them up.
Right.
And we were like, okay, we're gonna play like 50 minutes top, just like real game, top intensity. And you can't do that forever, because you just wipe out your actors. So we do that, and then we would like do a little bit of something like more choreographed, that I would choreograph, because I feel like I was able to. And then that would take a while actually, because we have to do it once and then and twice.
When you say choreograph, what do you mean in particular? Or just one particular shot, one scene, two players, and you dictate this is what I want to see.
Exactly. You'll receive the ball. You kind of have to run here. Then choreograph like a play. And in the editing, I just mix that with like the actual real footage, so you can't really tell when it's choreographed or not. I feel like if you pay a lot of attention, you probably can, but I think it just adds clean. Because sometimes when you're just filming a real game, like the ball is just bouncing all over the place, and it's kind of hard to follow really. And you, out of like 30 minutes of filming, you get like 2 or 3 minutes that are usable.
It's like watching Wimbledon. Hard to follow where the ball's going.
I was trying to take offence to that, but when I thought about it, I thought it's probably fair assessment from Miguel.
The bits where the result of the match is also important in terms of the plot, you have to choreograph those bits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny because like some of the teams were better than the actual team that's supposed to win the tournament. And I was like, sometimes they were losing. It's like, no, you guys are supposed to win the tournament. Like, we have to figure it out. Exactly.
Was that bit of a competitive edge? Did you get a sense of that as you kind of open? So like, let's play 15 minutes. Was that competitive nature evident? Did you get a sense that off the players? Obviously, they have a kind of sporting background, professional kind of background.
Especially towards the last game.
You were looking for that. I suppose you would have depended on that, were you?
Absolutely. Especially towards the last game, I feel like the main team on the grand final, like we were just so fired out because we've been filming for like, I don't know, a month at that point. And so like the other team was just kind of just fresh and new, just came like very nonchalant to the play, and this guy's just like trampled them the first half because they were just so riled up from the experience of like everything leading up to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just one other question I just had on filming it on an iPhone. Like, do you think that this is a trend? Like, I mean, it's obviously not the first time this has happened. I mean, it's happened in a lot of productions recently, but did you find any limitations with it, or do you think to yourself, right, I'm excited for what I can do just with my phone over the next little while?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a lot of advantages. It was a process. The process started with really convincing myself that it made sense, that you could do it, that it wouldn't be like a laughing matter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you
it's not a gimmick.
Yeah, it's not a gimmick, exactly. I mean, there's definitely like budgetary concerns or reasons to do it, and if you're filming like with non-professional actors, it helps to have a smaller camera, because if you put a big camera in front of them, they can get intimidated. We filmed like in a very open, not very controlled locations, so when you have, I mean, everybody thought we were doing like a student film, so we have like hundreds of extras for free, and nobody's looking at the camera. So, and those things like really elevated the production value, and like just the movement, an agile crew, all that stuff helped.
Do you need to put lenses on it? Do you have to buy special lenses to make it look?
You can. Like we wanted to film initially with an anamorphic lens, but it was at that point the iPhone was so new, there wasn't even like the gadgets to carry the lens.
Right.
But you can film anamorphic. We put like some ND filters on it, which just to lower the light, and we filmed in a different application. I like the native app of the phone. It's called Filmmaker Pro. And you can film in logarithmic, which kind of desaturates the image, and that amplifies the dynamic range and gives you a little bit more control about the shutter speed and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The marriage of form and narrative and the functionality as a director, how do you kind of navigate this to make sure that at the same time, at the centre of everything, while all this technology is cool and everything, you're still telling the story of a family and their recovery from a traumatic incident?
Well, yeah, exactly. I feel like that's the key. Eventually, you just read really a really good story, which I feel like we had. Like I was more comfortable in my skills as a screenwriter than as a director. I've just been doing it longer because it's easier to practice. And you realize just like the camera is just a tool. I mean, obviously it's a very important tool because it's the visual language and it's the grammar and everything. But like, these cameras are filmed like 4K, like 30 frames per second. Like you can film in slow motion at 60 frames per second. It's like these cameras shoot better than like a professional camera from the 90s. You know what I mean? So it's like the visual aspect is sufficient enough. I mean, sometimes you run into problems when there's like night scenes, for example, because it has such a small sensor, it doesn't let a lot of light in.
Right.
So you always have to kind of over-illuminate just to have like a normal look, and that was like a process that we learned a little bit late. But overall, you just realize that just story is story, and it needs to have a plot. You need to be care about the characters, and the camera is just another tool.
Can you explain to us how Adam McKay influenced the film?
Well, Adam McKay's idea, it was his idea to shoot on iPhone. I was like, Adam's was kind of like my, he's kind of been my mentor since I met him when I moved to LA early on, and he was always just a champion and very encouraging. You know, when you're starting out in this kind of thing, and you're writing for no one, basically. Just writing because you have these dreams, but nobody really wants to read your material. You're not even good enough for to be even considered. So it's just these little like animals always kept pushing me like, oh, you got it, like just keep going, and it's just those little comments throughout the years that keep you in this thing, because I mean, being the life as an artist is not easy when you're starting out, really.
Yeah, like because from his perspective, it's really interesting that he has written some incredible stuff, but he's also directed that incredible stuff and has managed to bring it to life in a very unique way that I don't think would be possible if somebody else just took a script and directed it. So yeah. I presume that's kind of what you're thinking about when you write this thing. You're like, this is my baby. I know exactly how they should look.
Absolutely. I don't think I could ever direct something that I didn't write or at least co-write. I don't even exactly know how that process would work. It sounds so difficult because when you're writing it and then you go transition to directing, you kind of know the story inside out. Everybody's motivation. It just makes it so much more intuitive and easier. I feel like just some of the great directors, like a Fincher, for example, a David Fincher, who just is a director and will get somebody's script. I feel like it's so much more work, and it's even more admirable in that way, because I feel like it would be more difficult.
So in 3 years' time, when Marvel come calling, you're like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Well, like maybe they'll let me co-write it.
Yeah. Okay. It'll end up being like the best superhero movie of all time.
Yeah, I know that if you mention it, it's like, I'm going to put an asterisk.
Yeah, your agent is like, oh, shh, Miguel.
What do you mean by Adam McKay being a mentor to you? How has that been, or what sort of work is it?
Yeah, he's just always, I feel like it's just basically just encouragement.
How did you meet him?
It was like through a mutual friend. I had just moved to LA from New York, and I ended up like somehow at this like I think like his house party or something, right. And I just met him and we kind of hit it off, and he just kind of took me a little bit under his wing. He was doing the distribution or the release of The Big Short at the time. And I saw the movie and I was just kind of flabbergasted by how good it was. I mean, it really is. I think it's a masterpiece. And now that he's done Don't Look Up, I feel like he's just blown up so big, and it's kind of exciting to now have my tiny little film, which he suggested I should just shoot on iPhone because I had no money, now be in Dublin at the same time that he just received an award. So I had dinner with him yesterday, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
It doesn't take much sometimes, doesn't it? You probably ask the question thinking, oh, did he get really down technical and give you a huge direction in terms of what you need to be doing? Miguel, you need to be doing this, that, the other. Sometimes it doesn't take that. It's just what Miguel says, just a little bit of encouragement, just to, simple, just keep going. You've got some good stuff here. You're talented. Keep pushing. That's all it takes sometimes. Exactly. That's all you need.
Exactly. That's all. Being an artist, when you're starting out being an artist, such an abstract idea, especially like film directing is just such a like abstract first world kind of ambition, and you start through. I got into it through writing or screenwriting, so it's just kind of very confusing to exactly know how you're going to get into the industry or where you should start, or whether you're good enough or not. It's just so personal, and includes so much rejection that, again, as Kenny says, just like these little just tidbits of encouragement and motivation really can carry you for years.
Yeah, and there's a clear parallel between sports careers. We were talking about that earlier on. If somebody had encouraged you to shoot a bit more.
Artists.
The artists of the ball. Yeah.
Never quite bought into that. I've got to be honest with you. Footballers being in that field of art.
Well, I think
there's maybe exceptions.
Maybe if somebody tapped you on the shoulder and said you can do this. Well, I mean, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. No, but I feel like maybe the trajectory is a little bit the same, where you just like, it's also kind of like an ephemeral goal, like it's kind of elusive. Everybody wants it. It's kind of winning the lottery. You kind of make it.
I've always been a bit uncomfortable with the tag of great artist. It's never sat comfortably on my shoulders, Miguel. You know what I mean?
Untapped potential, I think, Kenny, is the theme of today's show. The movie screens tonight at the Lighthouse Cinema at 6 p.m. It's called Vapor Diego, and we're going to tweet a link to where you can buy tickets for it. We wish you the very best of luck with it. Do you know what's next, or is there an immediate plan for where the movie screens next?
Well, now this agency kind of acquired the film, so like they do the distribution now, and so I just kind of do recommendations, and I think we'll see exactly where they position it next. There's definitely going to be like a
release in Mexico.
No, the agency is in Spain.
Right. And will there eventually be a release in Mexico?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully, like, it'll go to, like, a major streaming platform or something like that. But that's just now, it's such a complicated process, the process of selling a movie. Like, it's just it's much better than somebody else. Yeah, does that.
Definitely, yeah. That will kill the sense of art.
It's already a little bit, like, just the post-production process of this film was brutal, yeah.
I'd say so, yeah. But, I mean, you've come through it the other side, and you've got something to be really proud of. So we wish you the very best of luck with it. Thanks, man.
Could I just ask the after-show party? Was there any information for coming
for you?
This evening?
For you,
I can't make it. I'm working, but afterward, post.
You have to go to the screening to go to the after party. That's kind of the condition. So we're hoping to see you there.
Miguel, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. We're going to play you out with some Andy Dunne tomorrow. GA Quick Picks, Rugby, Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan, and we'll have the crappy quiz as well. Here is Andy Dunne and Joe Malloy in full previewing Ireland-Italy. Enjoy.
Now you're welcome along. So week 3 of the Six Nations is upon us. We will have Scotland-France at Murrayfield. We'll have England-Wales at Twickenham. And then on the Sunday we will have Ireland against Italy. Very happy to say Mr. Andrew Dunne has popped into studio. Good to have you in.
Good to be in, Joe.
Johnny Sexton before the media today, clean bill of health. He's been training for over a week now. Ian Henderson, though, is out. He has tested positive for COVID. So that is the latest from the Irish camp. Sexton or Carbery? I presume everybody is in agreement that Joey Carbery should start this game.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any particular value for what are we going to learn by Sexton playing?
The only argument I've heard put forward is that Sexton hasn't played since the Wales game, which is, will be a 5-week gap to Twickenham, and as good as Sexton is at arriving fully cooked even after a timeout, for such a big game at Twickenham, give him the first 40, 50 minutes to get himself tuned
maybe give him the last 20. I
think the first 40 or 50 is what Johnny Sexton has asked for.
I would imagine he's asked for the full 80. That's why he is where he is. That's why he seems at times, he's impenetrable. He's of huge value because of that attitude. But I think at a time, sometimes the coach has to say, and Farrell's strong enough. I think he's also perfectly capable at this stage of his career of taking a 4-week break and arriving into England fully cooked. He's not that type. He's not a young player who needs to find his feet for 20, 30 minutes to get to feel the flow of a game. You could argue, it's just that's not a requirement for him anymore. He knows his way around. He knows exactly his own game. He knows everyone else's. I just don't see us learning anything from him starting. I think we can learn a huge lot, significantly more from Carbery starting.
Yeah. I would, in a parallel universe, love to have seen a young Johnny Sexton challenging this current Johnny Sexton. Think of him screaming down at O'Gara. That kind of get out of my way, pal. Because everybody's been very cordial and acknowledging of Johnny Sexton's greatness, and maybe a bit too damn nice to Johnny Sexton at times.
Yeah. Well, look, Raj was a very similar, is a similar character. They're both very spiky.
Yeah.
Both have had, well-documented tantrums and fights with verbal fights, mainly with opposition, and with each other.
I wouldn't say Rog genuflected before Humphreys either, even though it was a more respectful, less fraught relationship than O'Gara-Sexton.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting observation. The younger crew coming through would be a lot more reverential about taking his spot. There's not much spite in any of them to go after him and knock him off his perch. And I can totally relate to what you're saying. It would be great to see some gutter snipe come in and go for him, at the shins, so to speak, and just say, I want your spot. It's not happening. It doesn't seem to be in the nature of the next in line, but it doesn't. I don't think that diminishes their capabilities either. So there's different profiles. I think we sometimes fall into the trap of typecasting. If you're an actor, you look at O'Gara for 7-8 years, you think the next person in has to be the same as him. Sexton was very similar, I suppose, in terms of personality and game management. You then look at Sexton, you think the next one has to be like him, and in reality he doesn't. It can be a weakness in Irish rugby that all roads lead to the 10, and the 10 controls everything. And again, I think we hamstring ourselves in the same way that the 10 apparently has to be the place kicker. And you look at Melvin Jaminet, and you look at France, and you look at historically in the Six Nations, great kickers, Lee Halfpenny, Gavin Hastings, all the French kickers, they don't rely on 10s all the time. I think it's something in the Irish makeup around rugby that our 10 needs to be the on-field leader, always needs to be the kicker. It's something I'd like to see us ultimately maybe move away from in time, but not while Sexton's around.
No. And to be fair to Kirby, he's more than entitled to his own temperament and his own way of doing things. Just because it's not a full-on pantomime for us all to see does not mean he's gunning for the position.
Yeah. I know he's got huge determination. I think you can see that in the way he's bounced back from adversity. And I think you can see it in the way he's conducted himself in really key moments. I think there's a rite of passage for all young out-halves. Where do you earn your stripes? I mean, he earned his stripes by going through the injury or injuries that he went through, but then coming back on in that New Zealand game and knocking over 3 kicks, 2 very difficult ones and 1 gimme at a crucial time in a major international game. That's where you get your rite of passage and you earn your stripes as a 10. And I think his stock will have risen again, having started and completed another 80 minutes down in Paris.
Yeah. Not by screaming at Ron O'Gara on the ground.
And he doesn't have to. I mean, Bowden Barrett's very quiet. Yeah. You know what I mean? And he's pretty handy.
So, well, I haven't spoken to you since the game in Paris. You would have watched Carberry's performance very closely. What has been so interesting about the Carberry discussion around that night is that I have heard the full spectrum of 8 out of 10 man of the match, right back to an indication as to why we really do need Sexton for the World Cup. So you can give us a number 10's view.
I'd probably I'd sit on the fence on this one. I would lie somewhere in the middle. I think kind of above average. I certainly don't think he was an 8 out of 10. I think he can play better, and I don't think he was central actually to the result either. He plays kicked very well. He's kicking out of hand reasonably well. He has variation in his game. He had a lovely little moment of kind of elusive footwork about 5 minutes into the game where he could have got collared, and he just showed what he's got in terms of capability there. And overall, the game management, when I watched it live, I think I was guilty of the same thing we just spoke about, the immediate comparison to what would Sexton be doing, what would we be doing in this situation were Sexton there. And I think we have to look at it through a different lens. I think having watched it back, I thought he had a pretty composed game. I don't think he'd any particular howlers. I think the team worked well around him. And in reality, the result was determined by a number of small incidents that had nothing to do with them, really. I think.
I'm going to ask this next question. Let's not go too far down this road because we've had this discussion plenty. But it's a constant issue of concern. Johnny Sexton, this is another championship where he gets injured mid-tournament. He hadn't played since the All Blacks game. So injuries are a regular occurrence in his life, and so we're headed to the World Cup now. I think it is inconceivable that Sexton will go through a World Cup age 38 without injury. So at what point do we have to start? Well, we're saying Carberry is definitely the number 2.
Yeah.
At what point do we also have to start saying, if Sexton's out for a big game, we now need to think about Jack Carty off the bench. So Carberry to start, Carty to come off the bench, Sexton to be at home bristling with his feet up because he wants to play, but he'll understand the bigger picture, and you will play at the World Cup all going well.
Yeah.
Because you look at where we are now, there's the Italian game, there's really not another quote-unquote easy game or very winnable game until November, and then we're into the following year Six Nations, and then it's showtime. So at the moment, Carberry is barely cooked, and if Jack Carty's going to have to play the last 20 minutes of a huge game for Ireland, he's nowhere near. And this is where I kind of look at management, and I do feel we are sleepwalking into a World Cup where Sexton gets injured in the pool stages. Hope he doesn't, obviously, but let's deal in some realities and likelihoods. Or he goes off a cliff physically, which could happen in the next year as well. It still feels like we're sleepwalking into this situation at 10.
I don't agree.
Good, go on.
Respectfully.
Great.
I think they're very well appraised of the situation. I do. I think you very, very astutely put it there. You know, this Sexton is going to be involved. He's not going to. It's unlikely he's going to have a kind of a flashy run through a World Cup with no injuries. But the team, the entire way the team operates now is different. There's been they've diluted responsibility. They've taken it away from the position of 10 in the way under the Schmidt system. It was very dogmatic. It was very successful for long periods, as we know. But ultimately that was part of the weakness in the end. It was run centrally through the likes of Sexton, and it was very predictable. The current team, the attack is as good as we've attacked in 7-8 years. Very difficult to predict where we're going to attack, who is the playmaker. Very often, as we've discussed, is Tadhg Furlong or one of the front five, which is a very novel way to look at how you create in midfield. We didn't do it also well in the French game, but previously we've been clearing our lines and exiting very well through different means, whether it was a James Lowe left foot, the occasional box kick or a long kick from 10. That dilutes the role of 10 somewhat, and it takes away that constant kind of magnifying lens on the role and the execution. And so that's not by accident. I don't think that's because they feel the backup is inadequate. I think that's just the way they want to play. I think
less predictable.
Yeah.
And yet I still it's hard not to feel it's not still a very, very central position.
Yeah, I mean,
it never won't be.
It's always going to be. Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a central position. But I would contest with you that I don't believe they're sleepwalking into some trap in the next World Cup.
I'll change that. They're going in with their eyes wide open to this problem. They're aware of it. It's like we're all aware of it.
It's about turn. Sleepwalking.
Yeah, we're still heading that direction, though. We're sleepwalking, our eyes are wide open, but I think we're heading right towards it. And I think we'll be chatting during the World Cup saying, geez, Jack Carty's coming on here for the last 25 minutes. And
not if we're pragmatic about it. If we're pragmatic about it now, and the fellas who are behind Sexton get sufficient game time, and they're getting it at their clubs, and they're going to get, I would hope, they're going to get adequate exposure in the international arena, then it's not that big a deal.
There's still time. There's still time to wake up.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we have Italy this weekend.
Yeah.
Twickenham, Johnny plays, I presume. Scotland with a championship on the line, Johnny plays, I presume.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
New Zealand tour, Johnny plays, I presume. November, the big game, Johnny will play, I presume. Back to Six Nations, Johnny plays, I presume. We're back to sleepwalking.
I wouldn't throw him in. If even if he's fully fit in all three tests down in New Zealand, I wouldn't throw him in to start in all three. No way.
Do you think
even
Farrell
if he was fully fit?
Do you think Farrell
I don't think he will. No, I think he's going to give one of the other two a go, or someone else.
Which is the right thing to do.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, to win a test in New Zealand would be a brilliant take home. To lose 3-0 and take two hidings, not going to do anything for us. But I think teams that have designs to be successful in a World Cup historically have been able to pick off New Zealand away from home. South Africa have done it, France have done it, England did it in 2003. And I do think this team correctly have an opinion of themselves that they can do damage at the World Cup. And if they do believe that, they're going to go down and try and, I think, pick off New Zealand at least once away from home. We've never done that. That's a huge ask. And I think that would be a massive result in New Zealand for the summer, and I'd love to see one of the others, if not both of them, start a test each and get exposure in that kind of cauldron atmosphere.
So give Joey Carberry a start, give Jack Carty a start.
Yeah, one or the other. But certainly, I don't. Even if Sexton was fully fit, I wouldn't give them all three. No, just so we don't sleepwalk into a scenario that you've painted.
Or eyes wide open, which is more reprehensible. Eyes wide open, I think.
Yeah, possibly.
We'll come back to that chat invariably over the next 15 months, I'm sure. But Carberry, in short, very promising performance in Paris without being perfect. If there were areas that you'd love to see him improve upon, I suppose, what would they be?
I don't think there were areas that were lacking in his game. I think the overall team performance made it difficult for the 10 to impose himself in any other way on that match. I think if you look something I found really striking was the outside backs for France. This has very little to do with Carberry or Sexton had he been on the field. Villiers, Moefana, Penno, every time they got the ball in the first 60 minutes, you know, it was almost like they're big men. Certainly Penno and Moefana are big men. Villiers is
surprisingly strong
and not that big, but almost freakishly strong. But they beat their opposite man on a number of occasions as individuals. Really explosive footwork, you know, lateral movement, left the guy for dead, got through, and that's what broke us in that first half. That's not really got anything to do with how your 10 is controlling the game or otherwise. I think Carberry was guilty of one of the missed tackles, so maybe you could throw that. But that's not a system failure, that's an individual miss. But those three lads for France wreaked havoc in that first half. And what happened then, they broke us, they broke our initial line. You've then got Antoine Dupont running on to fast ruck ball, into Mac outside him. And we saw on a number of occasions then the likes of, how you pronounce it, Uini Antonio,
151 kgs.
Yeah, coming at it, you know, like a bull. And very, very difficult at that stage to kind of, I suppose, in any way to stop that. As soon as that initial line break happens, and there were incidents like that littered through the first 60 minutes where I think it's an easy fix. I don't think it's a systems fix. I remember in my own playing days, Matt Williams had all kinds of phrases you could remember, but a boxer's stance was one going into a tackle. You don't see a boxer in a ring standing square, facing with his feet stuck in the mud or stuck on the canvas in the ring. If you get into that position, you're in trouble. He would talk about, say, you lead in at an angle, 1 foot leads, and you're on your toes, your heels are off the floor, and there's a lot of footwork going on. And like, it's one of the ultimate alpha male things you see in sport. One guy's running at the other, looking to trample all over your soul. You know what I mean? He's going to kill you. The next guy is going to try and take him down in a tackle. If you halt your progress at any stage and stamp your feet in the mud flat, you're in all kinds of trouble. And I saw that 5 or 6 times in the first 60 minutes, particularly in those one-to-one matchups with Villiers, Moefana and Penno. Now, they're top-class attackers, but I would imagine Easterby, any of the Irish coaching team looking at that and immediately saying, whatever happened against France, that doesn't happen again. And that's a quick fix. These players are technically good enough to change that. It could have been just, big atmosphere, adrenaline, any of the above, but they're not difficult technical fixes. So, you stop that, you stop a lot of the French momentum. We also, our discipline started to creak because they got behind us, and then we suddenly were a team who doesn't give away penalties for 58 minutes against Wales, and we're coughing up what looked like soft penalties. It's only because we were chasing our tails. It's only because those initial line breaks happened. So
that's very interesting, because I think if you got most people to remember where France really punished Ireland with the ball 2 weeks on, their memory would be some of the big boys carrying over the gain line and then all hell breaking loose. Whereas actually,
it was the other way around.
It's the Villiers, the Mofanas, the Penno. They jink, and then the big boys are sent in after that.
It was the other way around. I think the narrative, you come away from that game and people will say, look, they're bigger, they're heavier up front. They kind of, we're not quite there. They bullied us physically. And if you look at our scrum, I was one of the people who was concerned and saying, they're going to go after a scrum. Our scrum didn't creak one bit. And every credit to John Fogarty, every credit to the front five. People were questioning, was Tyke Byrne physically big enough? There was lots going on there in terms of concerns. And are they bigger and stronger? If they're bigger and stronger and they're going to huff and puff and blow the house down, they didn't. They certainly didn't do it in the scrum. We drove, we got a try off a driven maul. Again, in terms of matching them physicality, that was also really clever play, not just physicality. We transferred the ball in that maul twice in about 3 seconds and just suddenly found the fly was in space. But they didn't simply overpower us.
Would you not even concede at the breakdown they seemed to overpower us?
Well, because the breakdown, they were coming onto it. They were charging onto their own ball because they broke us with their back three runners.
Even when Ireland were in possession, they
did that twice. Certainly, they cost us that way. Yeah, I think that's fair. They were physically. I think they just had the presence to not be moved at times off the ball. So in defence, yeah, they caught us twice and they caught us cold. One was a line-out exit in their own 22 in the second half. Again, like we've won 100% of our line-outs in the previous game.
Yeah.
And we've been very competitive defensively. They picked us off twice defensively. Paul O'Connell as a player, I no doubt would have had sleepless nights. I don't know how he's mellowed as a man, but I'd say he's a few more sleepless nights, and his team, his players, the same.
The word is Paul O'Connell hasn't slept in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm sure. No, it's not. But
I hope he has. He's a young kid.
I'm guessing.
Probably hasn't.
So you're far more optimistic about this French performance than we've talked after plenty of defeats, and even after certain Ireland wins where you're kind of not loving what you're seeing. You would take that performance in Paris?
I would, because I think the things that went wrong, had we been drilled off our own scrum ball 4 times, had we been clearly overpowered in what you take situations where there's parity on the field, it's a 1-to-1 and we lose that collision constantly, that actually didn't happen. What happened was they broke us by attacking space with really electric kind of attackers, but it wasn't that they overpowered us physically. That kind of predicated them running onto the ball at serious pace, and then they're going to win that collision. And I think the Irish management would look back at that and say, stop it at source, stop it at source, stop it at source on 5 different occasions in that first 60 minutes, and you're no longer on the back foot. And I think that's a much easier fix than a systematic, we've been overpowered.
I must watch the game back, because my sense coming away was they just bullied us physically. And this is a very different line of thinking.
That was my sense of. I was on a stag in Austria, and so it was a bit worse for wear watching it. But I've watched it back since, because I was on a stag in Austria, and I turned the sound off, and I've watched it a few times, and that's my sense of it. I think something we probably didn't quite factor in, that 1-to-1, those wing 3/4 that they've got. I think we figured we'd match up really well defensively 1-to-1, and we didn't.
Yeah.
I do think that's a relatively quick fix. Yeah.
Okay, good. I haven't heard many people making that point. We're talking with Andy Dunne. Our rugby coverage and Off the Ball is with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsor of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in. Any ideal world, be they in the squad or not, any players you'd love to see get game time for Ireland?
My mind's gone blank. The 13, sorry, from Ulster, Hume.
James Hume, yeah.
I'd like to see Hume get a run. I think he's a really non-typical Irish centre. He kind of has a bit of Jeremy Guscott in him. He's a nice running style. He's got good footwork. He is a good distributor. He's physically very strong. He's deceptively strong. He's not your typical Irish centre. I grew up watching Philip Danaher and Morris Field, and then I think typically we've looked at, Brendan Mullen maybe in the 80s was this kind of bit more of a footballing player. O'Driscoll could do everything, so he was an outlier. But yeah, Hume seems to fit that mould where he's a graceful type player, but he's also physical. He's got a creative side to his game. He's got a lot of football in him, and now we've got an embarrassment of riches at the moment. There, you've got Henshaw benching. You've Ringrose playing super rugby. One of the things I took away from the Welsh game was Bundy Aki's distribution. His passing was superb.
Okay, I'm a little bit torn on this, right? Because probably from a perspective of a journalist, I would certainly ask someone, are we on the record? I would, but Shipno's perspective is that it's a biography. He rang him up. He'd requested an interview, and he started talking about issues. I'm torn on it, but I sort of would maybe am I just biased? This like a journalist leaning towards the journalist versions of events on this, but like if it's such a sort of I guess look at it from another perspective, right? It's such a massive issue that what purpose was Mickelson looking to serve by ringing up and offering these opinions? Is he trying to influence that as something that would be, source attributed? It's not as if he's a 19-year-old kid here. Like, he knows how the media works. So what is he trying to gain from these comments? Like, there's a suspicion there, isn't there, that the book isn't coming out for a couple of months, and Mickelson wanted an element of, that the book itself would take some of the heat off whatever might come from him in the coming weeks, and then the journalist decided to release the information straight away. If people aren't aware, like, this is it. Like, this came out of a. Like, Shipnook is doing a biography of Phil Mickelson that Mickelson had refused to cooperate with in terms of, giving an interview for it. But then he rings you up and starts talking about all sorts of things that are going to be covered in the book. Like, what do you stand to gain from that?
Well, I think he was trying to almost spin it and give background and show that, look, I'm a smart dude. Yeah. I'm playing the Saudis here as much as I am the PGA Tour. He is the smartest guy in the room complex, Phil Mickelson. Likes people to think that way about him. So I think he was given background and given his perspective this is background for your book. If you want to know my motivation here, that's what it is. And I think there is no chance in hell that Phil Mickelson, on the record, refers to the Saudis as scary mother effers. I think there's no chance he refers to the torture of Khashoggi in such casual fashion, or the murder of gay people in such casual fashion. I think he was free-flowing. This is just us talking. I'd say Mickelson has had a career of talking to golf journalists and probably never said this is off the record, but it was just implied.
I don't know, yeah.
And so I think Shipnook, he heard it and he was like, well, this is absolutely electric. Phil still hasn't officially said we're off the record. I'm not going to ask him if we're on the record, and I'm going to hang up the phone. And he never said it, so I think there's a degree of Mickelson incredibly naive, but I also think there's some gotcha vibes off this as well.
I do see your point. I do sort of see where you're coming at. Like, I don't know.
Now, it doesn't change the fact, by the way.
He's also not 19 either, though.
No, it doesn't. And let's not turn this into a journalism symposium. It doesn't change the fact that Mickelson's views are grotesque. That's the bottom line. Okay, they're publicly out there now, but this is how he was talking behind the scenes and how you suspected it was behind the scenes, and he's been caught rotten. So, that's the fundamental point. But I think I'd say he was fairly surprised to see them laid bare this week.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.